Chapter 161. Dangerous Confrontations. Roman's strong arms had barely left my waist, his kiss still lingering on my mind as he retreated to his study to work. The room felt colder without him, and I burrowed deeper into the thick blankets he'd tucked tightly around me earlier. I stared at the ornate beams of the ceiling, letting my mind wander back to the Winter family's latest mess. A bitter laugh escaped me as I remembered Marcus's pitiful words. "We will fulfill all your demands, Scarlet." Demands? What a laugh, as though their years of neglect could be erased with a single gesture of desperation. Fulfilling my demands won't rewrite the past, Marcus. Too little, too late. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. My heart sank when Enforcer Wilson's voice came through the door. "Miss Scarlet, Daniel Winter is at the gates. He is requesting to see you." For a moment, I froze. Daniel? Here? The audacity. Slowly, I pushed the covers off and swung my legs over the side of the bed. "Does Roman know?" I asked cautiously, already knowing the answer. "No, miss," Wilson confirmed. "Shall I inform him?" I stood, straightening the thick robe Roman insisted I wear around the drafty villa. "No," I said firmly. "I'll handle this alone." Wilson hesitated before replying. "Yes, miss." I tightened the belt of the robe with a sharp tug and inhaled deeply. I wouldn't bother Roman with something as insignificant as Daniel. This was a matter I could deal with myself. "Let him wait at the gates," I muttered under my breath as I started toward the door. I wasn't planning to make this easy for him. The sharp wind bit at my face. I shifted impatiently from one foot to the other, the snow crunching under my boots. Scarlet was doing this on purpose. I was sure of it. "This is ridiculous," I growled, casting a quick glance at Alexander, who stood silently next to me, his back propped against his car. His silence just made me angrier. What kind of sister keeps her brother waiting outside? Does she think she's better than us now? Alexander raised an eyebrow but remained silent, his face pale and marked with bruises from his last run-in with Roman. I ignored his indifference and pressed on. "This is the problem with Scarlet," I snapped bitterly. "She's always been difficult, always about herself. And now this, turning Grace's condition into some sick game." Alexander's lips pressed together, but he still didn't answer me. His silence was growing increasingly irritating. "Don't you agree?" I demanded, turning toward him. "She's acting like she's untouchable just because she has Roman backing her. It's disgusting." "Daniel," Alexander said quietly, his tone warning. "Grace is dying while Scarlet twists the knife." My voice rose sharply. "This isn't just petty revenge. This is cruel. Where's her conscience? Her decency?" I clenched my fists. "I hope Roman sees through her sooner rather than later. When he does, she'll..." "Regret what exactly?" The voice that cut through the cold air made my blood turn to ice. I spun around as Scarlet's figure emerged from the villa's main pathway. Wrapped tightly in a dark coat, her auburn hair was swept crisply over one shoulder. Her emerald eyes sparkled not with warmth but with biting amusement. I hadn't even noticed her approach. How long had she been standing there? "Well," she prompted, her lips curling into a mockery of a smile. "Please continue. What exactly would I regret?" Daniel looked ready to explode, his red face practically glowing against the stark white snow. Alexander remained where he stood, though his shoulders stiffened slightly. "What do you want, Scarlet?" Daniel's voice was low and filled with venom. "Haven't you done enough?" I raised an eyebrow. "Enough?" I repeated, letting the word hang in the air before a cold laugh slipped out. "Don't flatter yourself. You're the ones who ruined your own lives, not me." "You dare." Daniel took a step closer, his fists clenched. I interrupted him smoothly, ignoring his temper. "Oh, how is Grace, by the way? I hear she's not doing too well." But let's not get distracted," I continued, waving him off dismissively. "Speaking of Grace, she still owes me $1 million for that little bet about the seaside mansion. Any chance you're stepping up to cover that, dear brother?" Daniel's face twisted in rage. "Are you insane? Grace is sick. She's dying, and you're talking about money?" I smiled sweetly. "If it's such a problem, perhaps Alexander would like to handle it?" Alexander finally spoke, his voice calm but strained. "I'll pay it," he said. "If this means Grace gets treated, I'm willing to." I raised a hand to stop him. No, you've misunderstood." I tilted my head, looking at him with mock pity. "The money comes first, then we discuss treatment. Those are the rules." Alexander's cool facade cracked slightly, his jaw clenching. I need assurance. I won't pay until you guarantee Grace's treatment. So no deal, then, I said, turning my back to him. Honestly, I don't care about the money. She lost. It's that simple. Daniel grabbed my arm suddenly. Don't play games. Scarlett, he hissed. I turned to him, my voice sharp and unyielding. Take your hand off me now. He didn't release me. His grip only tightened. What are your conditions? He demanded. Say it. What do you want for Grace's life? I narrowed my eyes at him, my lips curling into a cold smile. My conditions, oh Daniel. Even if I told you, you couldn't meet them. You're unbelievable. His voice cracked with frustration, his body practically trembling with rage. Grace doesn't have time for this. If you have any humanity left, you... I raised a finger to silence him. You should talk to Roman about humanity. I'm sure he'd love to explain where you all lost yours. When Daniel began to spit more vitriol, I decided it was time to end this farce. By the way, I added casually, my gaze cold and cutting, how's Rachel and your son? Daniel's grip faltered, his face going pale in an instant. What did you say? Rachel Thompson, I repeated, my smile widening. Oh, come on, Daniel, don't play dumb. Your human lover, the mother of your 2-year-old son, or did you forget? His lips trembled. How do you know about that? I know everything, I said calmly. Every secret call, every whispered promise. Tell me, does Rachel know about your obsession with Grace? Scarlett. His voice was dark, his composure slipping. Don't you dare! I shrugged lightly, pulling my arm free with ease. You should be more careful with your secrets, Daniel. Wouldn't want Rachel finding out where your loyalties truly lie. Panic flared in his eyes, and I stepped back, turning toward the villa. Scarlett, he called, desperation lacing his tone. If you say a word about this, but before he could finish, a shadow loomed over us. The air turned heavy, an oppressive weight settling across my chest. Slowly I turned, my heart sinking like a stone. Roman. He stood no more than a few feet away, his piercing ice-blue eyes cutting through me like daggers. The wind ceased to matter. The cold of the snow biting my skin didn't register. If I expose what? Roman's voice was quiet, but the danger laced within it made my blood freeze. Out of instinct, I stepped back. This man, this monster. I'd never felt such an overwhelming sense of power from anyone. Roman's sharp gaze dropped to Scarlett's wrist, where faint red marks marred her skin from my earlier grip. His tone was deceptively soft as he asked, Did you put your hands on my mate? Any rage or confidence that had fueled me moments ago disappeared like smoke. My lips parted, but no sound came out as Scarlett walked past me without sparing me another glance. Chapter 162, Alpha's Retribution, Third Person's POV. The morning air turned heavy, almost suffocating, as Roman's alpha aura spread like a suffocating storm. His power crashed against the bodies of everyone present, forcing even strong alphas like Daniel Winter and Alexander Amber to stiffen instinctively. Their sharp gasps for air were evidence of just how overwhelming the Shadow King's presence had become. Neither dared to move, fearing the repercussion of catching his ice-blue gaze. Roman, standing tall and calm, seemed unaffected by the tension crackling around him. His voice was cold, measured, yet sharp enough to cut through the biting wind. Hunter, he said, not even sparing a glance at Scarlett, nestled by his side. Report on the Winter Pack's current financial state. Hunter stepped forward immediately. His voice was steady, though even his dominant wolf flickered with unease under Roman's radiating fury. Their resources are effectively gone. Moonstone trade agreements have been completely terminated. No compensation for the last shipment was granted. Stop it! Daniel's loud interruption shocked the moment into silence. His voice cracked, teetering on both desperation and frustration, as he threw up his hands in agitation. Enough already! Hunter froze mid-sentence, unsure whether to continue. Roman didn't move a muscle, but something dangerous flashed in his cold blue eyes. Daniel's wide, nervous eyes darted toward Scarlett, seeking her out like a drowning man searching for a lifeline. His desperation was palpable, etched in the tight lines of his face and the wild look in his eyes. This isn't fair, he pleaded. Scarlett, you can't let him do this. This is our family. You're one of us. But Scarlett didn't so much as flinch. She remained secured against Roman, her tense hand clutching at the fabric of his coat. Her emerald eyes were empty, devoid of sympathy for the brother who now sought salvation through her. Roman's brow barely lifted in interest. A small mocking smirk ghosted across his lips. When he finally spoke, his words were coated in icy calm. "Am I deaf, Daniel Winter?" The weight of his words sent visible shivers through Daniel's frame. His mouth opened, then shut, as if unsure whether defiance or further pleading would ruin him faster. Alexander, who watched from the side, kept his eyes averted, knowing full well the consequences of testing the Shadow King's patience. Daniel stammered, visibly shrinking under Roman's sharp gaze. His shoulders fell slightly as he pointed at Scarlet once again, his voice wavering. "Scarlet, please." Roman's casual tone never wavered, nor did his smirk vanish. "Scarlet," he said, his words deliberately slow, "do you agree with him? Should I stop inconveniencing the Winter Pack?" Scarlet's expression turned cold as stone. It was clear she wouldn't entertain her brother's desperation. The small smirk that curved Roman's lips twitched, replaced quickly with the merciless calculation hidden beneath. His movements came suddenly. With the sheer force of an alpha, his boot connected with Daniel's stomach in one lightning-fast, merciless motion. The sound of flesh meeting force rang out. Daniel's body crumpled into the snow, his face contorted in sheer agony. A broken wheeze left him as he doubled over, clutching his abdomen and coughing violently. "Pathetic," Roman murmured, brushing the dust from his sleeve as though Daniel's very presence had stained him. Scarlet didn't move, still staring ahead at her brother. Years of pain welled in her chest as she observed the writhing, gasping figure. From the side, Alexander's rigid stance faltered. His wolf Mason clawed beneath his skin, begging him not to act, not to invite Roman's wrath for a second time. Alexander's breathing became unsteady, his muscles trembling from the sheer dominance radiating off the Shadow King. He knew better. He had learned the hard way already. Roman studied Daniel for a moment before turning his sharp gaze to Scarlet. "He put his hands on you," Roman said, and the words carried a venom that could freeze blood. His fingertips brushed lightly against the faint bruises that wrapped around Scarlet's wrist, a mark of the earlier confrontation. Scarlet tensed as a shiver ran the length of her spine. Roman tilted his head, curious as he observed Daniel writhing in the snow. "Little wolf, how should I deal with him?" His tone was soft, but it was as deadly as the edge of a blade. "Should I just kill him here for daring to harm you?" The words hung in the frozen air, stark and chilling. Daniel, still wheezing on the ground, shakily raised his face. His breaths came sharp and wheezy as he choked on the frosty air. "Scarlet!" he gasped, desperation dripping from every syllable. "No, we're family, Scarlet. Be blood." Scarlet's lips parted, her expression unchanging. "Family?" she repeated flatly, her tone carrying none of the warmth or fondness the word usually held. Daniel's hands pressed against the snow as he tried to push himself upright. We're your family. I'm your brother," he croaked. The words felt heavy, weighed down by his unsteady heaving. The tension in Scarlet's body snapped away abruptly. Something in her finally cracked, the endless manipulation, the cruelty she endured through the Winter Pack. She inhaled calmly, so steady her breath looked like smoke in the frozen air. "No," she said simply. "You've never been my family. Do whatever you want with him, Roman." Daniel's face paled instantly. His glossy gaze turned venomous, though his weak, bruised body betrayed his helplessness. "You ungrateful?" He started to shout but froze instantly as Roman moved. Roman's hand dropped toward his silver bullet gun, the subtle click of metal snapping everyone's attention back to him. It was such a small motion, but it carried the weight of Roman's unrelenting dominance. Alexander flinched, his wolf Mason letting out a faint whine. Even Daniel seemed to lose the fire in his words. Excuse me," Scarlet said suddenly, her words breaking the icy silence that followed. Her voice trembled slightly. "I need to check on my healing herbs. Please handle this as you see fit." Roman didn't stop her, his blue gaze locking solely on Daniel as Scarlet stepped back toward the villa. Daniel called after her weakly, his voice faltering as her figure grew smaller in the distance. "Scarlet!" He coughed desperately, his voice catching as their fading pack bond burned deep in his chest. "Scarlet, don't leave me here." But she kept walking. Her shoulders tense and her steps quick as she pushed through the cold air and up the pathway toward her private study. Roman watched her retreating figure with a faint glint in his eye before turning his full attention back to Daniel. The calm, deliberate clicks of Roman chambering a silver bullet echoed in the tense air. The barrel of the gun pressed neatly against Daniel's forehead, solid and unyielding. His wolf bucked weakly beneath his skin, cowering as the Shadow King leaned slightly closer. "Do you know," Roman said conversationally, tilting his head like he was asking about the weather, "this is the hand you used to hurt her, isn't it?" Daniel's lips trembled as he stuttered out, "I didn't!" The sharp "ack" of the gunshot echoed across the clearing, deafening and pure. Daniel let loose a piercing scream as blood splattered the pristine snow. His left hand was now mangled and rendered useless, his entire frame collapsing from renewed pain. Roman didn't stop. His cold gaze didn't even flicker as he sighed softly. Daniel's panicked whimpers filled the space between their breaths. "So, this other hand," Roman continued, tilting the barrel to point at the opposite hand. His face remained stoic and calm. "This one, too, raised against her, did it not?" Daniel's wide, teary eyes pleaded desperately, his body writhing while his wolf continued to quake in submission. "And no. Please, Roman, I didn't try. I would never!" The second gunshot tore through him mid-sentence. The impact made Daniel's cry split, his head hanging low as blood dripped to stain the snow beneath his trembling frame. Inside her private study, Scarlet jolted slightly as the loud of gunfire echoed from a distance. Her breathing hitched, and for a second she wondered if Roman's actions had crossed the line. But when the sound of muffled, desperate howls reached her ears moments later, Scarlet's shoulders fell as a strange sense of relief bloomed faintly in her chest. Daniel was still alive, even if he wasn't particularly whole. Clearly, suffering was all that awaited him now. Chapter 163. Deadly Consequences. Scarlet. The faint echoes of those gunshots still lingered in my mind as I sat on the soft edge of my bed. My heart was beating faster than it should. I wasn't worried about Daniel, but about what kind of trouble Roman could pull towards himself by taking it too far. I slipped my feet into the nearest shoes I could grab, fluffy slippers that weren't appropriate for wandering in the snow, and rushed towards the hallway. The villa was silent. Too silent. My wolf Cora stirred restlessly under my skin. What happened out there? "Miss Scarlet," one of the patrolling enforcers greeted, bowing slightly as I stormed towards the front. "Where's Alpha, Roman?" I pressed, even as my toes quivered from the cold radiating through the marble floor. The enforcer's hesitation made me impatient. "Answer me!" Before he could respond, the front doors creaked open. The chill of winter wind poured into the hall as Roman and Hunter stepped through, bringing in a flurry of snow along with their imposing presence. I froze for a moment. Roman's piercing ice-blue gaze locked onto me immediately, narrowing when his eyes drifted down to my feet. "Fluffy slippers," he remarked darkly, as though scolding a rebellious child. "So urgent you couldn't even bother with proper shoes?" The corners of his mouth twitched, but it wasn't a smile. If anything, it was the kind of controlled amusement only Roman could master, beneath layers of sharp-edged dominance. I ignored the tone, focused solely on the bigger issue. "Did you hurt him badly?" The words left my lips in a rush as I hurried forward, snow crunching faintly under my inappropriate footwear. Roman tilted his head, his jaw tightening briefly. "Is my little wolf worried about her precious brother?" I scowled at the insinuation, coming to a halt a few feet away. "I'm worried about you causing trouble for the pack," I corrected sharply. "Alpha leaders don't usually look kindly on crippling rivals." His lips twitched higher into something more akin to playful irritation. "Ah, so not him but me," he mused, his voice deceptively soft. "Good." Hunter stepped aside, a smirk playing across his lips. He clearly found the exchange amusing, though Roman's intensity would chase off any laughter. But I wasn't laughing. Before I could ask more, Roman swept forward, stooping slightly to gather me into his arms without warning. His warmth enveloped me instantly, in stark contrast to the cold still clinging to the air. "Roman," I started, but he silenced me with an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "This," he said, gesturing briefly to my unsuitable attire, "is why you shouldn't leave the villa without thought. Catching a cold won't improve your already delicate condition." I opened my mouth to argue, but his grip tightened and I reflexively clung to his collar as he carried me up the steps. His tone dropped when he added, "Death is far too merciful for people like Daniel. He'll suffer." I stilled at his final word, swallowing. Roman's plans were never simple, and his vengeance always ran deep. A part of me pitied Daniel, not for being hurt, but for potentially being endlessly targeted by my domineering mate. The car jerked slightly, making Daniel let out another cry of pain from the back seat. His face was pale and twisted, droplets of sweat clinging to his hairline. My attempts to soothe him were useless against his moans of agony. "Jason," I called to the driver, "can't you go faster?" "I could," Jason replied curtly, his eyes fixed on the icy road ahead, "but do you want us to end up in the river instead?" I bit down on my frustration. The tension in the car was suffocating, worsened by Daniel's continuous groans and the stark stench of blood that filled the small space. "Can you pull over and give me painkillers or something?" Daniel snarled between groans, clutching his mangled hand. "Anything." "You shouldn't move your arm at all," I warned, keeping my voice calm and measured. Internally, though, my wolf growled, frustrated, helpless. This wasn't what I had planned when we set out to meet Scarlett earlier. We'd gone there hoping to strike a deal, anything to get Grace urgent treatment abroad, but Roman Thorne had turned the meeting into a nightmare. "You just let him do this," Daniel accused weakly, his glare lacking venom as his body writhed against the pain. "You just stood there, Alexander." My fists clenched. He wasn't wrong. But what could I have done against the Shadow King's overwhelming presence? Resistance would have been suicide. Jason suddenly slowed the car, sights of the Pack Hospital coming into view. Finally. At the emergency entrance, staff rushed to meet us. Meanwhile, Sarah and Marcus Winter appeared from behind them, their frantic expressions sharpening into anger as soon as they saw Daniel's condition, with his ruined hand heavily bandaged. "What on earth happened?" Marcus roared. Before I could respond, Sarah gripped my arm tightly. "Alexander, answer me. Where's Scarlett? Did she allow this to happen?" The sheer venom in her tone surprised me. Her fixation wasn't even on Roman, but rather on Scarlett. Somehow her rage was misplaced once again. "She stayed with Roman," I said tersely, trying to brush her grip away gently. "Stayed with Roman?" Sarah's voice pitched higher with fury. "How could she abandon her own brother after this?" "No, after everything." I said nothing more. What could I say? Defending Scarlett wouldn't help, not when Sarah's hatred seemed to harden further with every word. I buried my face in the pillows, embarrassed beyond words. Roman stood a few feet away, meticulously preparing a small jar of healing salve he'd retrieved. His voice broke through my nervous silence. "Are you going to hide all night, or are you ready to let me fix that?" "Go away," I grumbled, my voice muffled by the blankets. But he ignored the protest entirely. I saw his sharp eyes glimmer in amusement when he gently pulled the blankets down just enough to expose my neck. "Roman," I hissed, mortified all over again. His touch was light, entirely clinical, but the heat radiating from him made my pulse race. "You heal fast," he remarked teasingly as he continued applying the salve. "But not quite fast enough to save yourself much trouble, I bit my lip and turned my head to glare at him. "That's your fault." He smirked, entirely unapologetic. "And yet you don't look as upset as you sound." The sheer audacity of him only made me blush harder. But before I could fire back, our bond sparked slightly, carrying an unintended thought from me. Had he really hurt Daniel so badly? Roman's demeanor shifted as he leaned in closer. His voice dropped to nearly a whisper, sending a thrill down my spine. "I only care whether it bothers you. Does it?" The sudden intimacy made every shred of indignation evaporate. I turned my head sharply, scowling. "Quit trying to distract me. Just leave." For a moment, I thought he genuinely might. But as I peeked out past the blankets cautiously, Roman's hand darted in, catching my wrist with a smug grin. "Curiosity got the better of you," he asked, his tone leisurely calm, almost mockingly so. Startled, I instinctively clung to his collar for balance, only to realize the proximity left me defenseless. Roman seized the moment, capturing my lips in a kiss deep enough to leave me breathless. When we broke away, I balled my hand into a weak fist and half-heartedly hit his chest. "You're impossible," I huffed. "One of these days I'll bite you again." That earned a rare chuckle from him. He smiled softly, brushing a stray lock of my hair aside. "Then you'd still just be my silly little wolf." Chapter 164, Intimate Morning. Scarlett's P.O. I pressed my lips together, wincing at the sore spot Roman's endless kisses had left. "They're chapped," I complained, slouching against the headboard of the massive bed we now shared. My arms were crossed over my chest as I shot him a glare, which he seemed entirely unmoved by. He leaned casually against the doorframe, his ice-blue eyes piercing into me with a mix of amusement and feigned innocence. "Chapped lips?" He repeated with a mock-serious tone. "I'll be gentler next time." "Next time," I snorted at that. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You already look like you're planning more." He smirked, stepping closer. "Do you have any complaints, little wolf?" "Many," I quipped, scooting just enough to avoid his intimidating proximity. The scent of cedarwood followed him, and my traitorous heart sped up. "Starting with the fact that you're already confident there'll be a next time." Roman reached out with one hand, catching me gently by the chin. His thumb grazed my lower lip, making me freeze. The soft hum of our mate bond lingered in the touch, relaxing me against my will. "There will be," he said simply, his voice calm yet absolute. "I've waited too long for this, Scarlett. You'll adjust." My lips parted slightly, caught between irritation and the frustrating, overwhelming fondness he always drew from me. I shook my head to clear my thoughts, leaning back further into the bed. "You need to give me a break," I muttered, throwing a hand over my face for dramatic effect. My body still ached from the intimacy we'd shared, and on top of that, the snowstorm outside didn't exactly encourage a burst of energy. Still, the thought of staying cooped up didn't appeal much either. Maybe being at my healing center, immersed in work, would keep me distracted and far from Roman's current playful mood. I thought about stopping by the center, actually. I started, but trailed off. Roman raised an eyebrow, clearly already disapproving. "In this weather?" He gestured vaguely toward the snowflakes still tumbling outside the window. "With your injuries?" I sighed heavily. "I said I thought about it, not that I'd actually go." His stern gaze didn't soften, though. "Good." He leaned back, arms crossed. 2 weeks, little wolf. That's when we return to the Eastern Territories." My eyes widened slightly in surprise. 2 weeks. The idea of returning home filled me with excitement and a touch of fear. "That soon?" "Soon is relative," Roman said evenly, sitting at the edge of the bed now. His gaze met mine, unwavering. "We've delayed long enough." 2 weeks. I swallowed hard, both anticipation and dread swirling in my chest. "But the claiming marks," I mumbled, glancing at the faint ones scattered along my neck. "They're not exactly subtle. What am I supposed to say to Luna Catherine?" Roman gave a soft chuckle, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Tell her the truth." My jaw dropped. "The truth? Are you out of your mind?" I sputtered. "You think she's going to just accept this?" His smirk barely wavered. "Let me handle her. Nothing else matters." I blinked at him, amazed by his audacity. Amused, too, though I'd never admit it. After breakfast, I called Claire Evans, my assistant at the healing center. She answered almost immediately, her professional tone snapping in place the second she heard my voice. "Morning, Claire," I started, leaning back in my chair. "I need to set up a meeting tomorrow. Something small, just key staff." "Of course, Miss Winters. I'll prepare the conference room and arrange the usual teams," she replied efficiently. "Perfect," I said, nodding, even though she couldn't see me. I ended the call quickly, my mind briefly flitting toward work before moving to more important matters. Namely, Emma Chase. She answered on the second ring, her familiar chirpy tone immediately dissolving into laughter. "Scarlett, you're finally calling me. Do you know how bored I've been? I've been stuck at my family's pack house for days." I smiled faintly, her energy as contagious as ever. "I hope you're finding time to rest." "Rest is for weaklings," she scoffed lightly. "But oh, girl, you won't believe what I heard this morning." I arched a brow, curiosity piqued. "What now?" "Daniel Winter," she began, dragging out his name for dramatic effect, "is practically useless now." "What are you talking about?" "He messed with the Shadow King, Scarlett. You know what that means." My chest tightened slightly. "Daniel?" Roman hadn't elaborated much on what happened after I left the gates yesterday, but I could guess. Emma continued before I could respond. "His hands are ruined," she explained gleefully. "Completely wrecked. He'll barely recover if ever. Serves him right, you know?" I stayed quiet, her words sinking in. Anyway, Emma switched gears rapidly. I think the winter pack is falling apart. Grace is barely a factor anymore, and now Daniel's an invalid. I bet Sarah and Marcus are scrambling to find a way to save face. Not my problem, I replied flatly. That's the spirit, Emma chirped. Our conversation shifted naturally after that. Emma's energy always managed to soothe my nerves somehow. I told her about Roman's plans for our return to the Eastern Territories, and more importantly, my concerns about leaving the healing center behind. Why don't I take over for you? Emma suggested after a moment's pause. I mean, just temporarily. I couldn't possibly replace you full-time, but I can manage while you're gone. I frowned slightly. Are you sure you're up for that? It's a lot of responsibility. I can handle it, she said firmly. Besides, your staff is already well-trained, and if anything goes wrong, I'll still have you to micromanage me remotely. I laughed softly at her phrasing. I wasn't planning on micromanaging. Sure, you weren't. She paused briefly, her voice growing softer. But Scarlett, there is one thing. My smile faltered. What is it? This center is your safety net, she said cautiously. I just don't want you completely cutting ties with it. You're walking into dangerous territory, you know. Regaining control later could be harder than you think. Her concern tugged at my chest. She had a point, though I hated to admit it. All right, I conceded after a moment. Temporary management. All decisions run through me. Deal. Later in the afternoon, Roman's mood shifted. I could sense the tension in him before I even saw his expression. What is it? I asked cautiously, finding him in the sitting room, his fingers steepled against his lips. Nothing, he replied curtly, though the coldness in his eyes told another story entirely. I was about to press him when Aiden appeared, his movements hurried and his expression desperate. Scarlett, Aiden called softly, drawing both Roman's and my attention. My brows furrowed immediately. Let me guess, I began wryly. It's Hazel, isn't it? Aiden grimaced but nodded sharply. Yes. I frowned deeper, motioning for him to explain. She's been caught, he admitted reluctantly, his voice low. Hunter found her before I could. So? I leaned back, unimpressed. He stepped closer, practically pleading. Scarlett, you need to talk to Roman. Get him to back off before it's too. Hazel, I interrupted sharply, was involved in Natalie's attempt to abduct me. Do you really think I'd help her? Aiden paled slightly, realizing how ridiculous his request, his desperation sounded. His mouth opened briefly before closing again without a sound. He stepped back slowly, shaking his head. I shouldn't have asked. No, I agreed coldly, crossing my arms. You shouldn't have. Chapter 165, Hidden Agendas. I couldn't sit. I couldn't stand still. The tension in Roman's study was too much. Every second that passed without an update on Hazel felt like an eternity. I paced the length of the room, the soles of my boots scraping softly against the polished wood floor. She's reckless, but she's not dangerous, I muttered for the 15th time, trying to convince myself as much as anyone else. My sister might cause trouble, but she didn't deserve what was coming if Roman and Hunter got overly creative. The study door creaked open smoothly, making me jerk to a halt. Eric Blackwood strode in with his usual calm confidence. Even now, he looked entirely composed, his tailored coat draped perfectly over his shoulders as if the tension in the room didn't apply to him. He handed his gloves and coat to Jerry, the household servant, with barely a glance. His sharp eyes scanned the room, taking in my pacing, Roman's stony silence, and the building storm in the atmosphere. If you keep talking, Eric said casually as he settled into a chair near the desk, Roman might actually follow through with that silver bullet threat. His detached tones scraped against my nerves like nails on glass. I whirled on him. Of course you can afford to sound calm. It's not your sister they're planning to torture, is it? Eric didn't flinch. He never did. Instead, his perfectly sculpted brow lifted in mild amusement. Torture? He repeated, sounding more curious than alarmed. A rather dramatic choice of words, even for you, Aiden. Well, what else would you call it? I snapped, running a hand through my hair in frustration. Hunter's men don't exactly excel at restraint, if they've caught her by now. Eric raised a hand, cutting me off mid-sentence. His dark eyes gleamed with something unreadable. Hazel's situation is unfortunate, I won't deny that. But think carefully before you accuse your alpha of torture. I clenched my teeth, the words sticking in my throat. Torture wasn't Roman's usual tactic, but his punishments were harsh nonetheless. My sister wasn't exactly built to withstand his fury. Reckless, Eric mused, leaning back in his chair with an air of detachment. Yes, that's the word. Hazel has always been reckless. My patience was wearing thin. You're not helping. I'm not trying to, Eric replied bluntly, one corner of his mouth twitching in faint amusement. I dropped heavily into one of the chairs, exhaustion creeping in. I just don't get it, I admitted, more to myself than anyone else. She hates Natalie. Why would she suddenly work with her? Why indeed, Eric murmured thoughtfully. His words hung in the air between us. For the first time, I realized I had no answer. Hazel's hatred for Natalie was legendary, stretching back to their childhood. Whatever was happening now didn't make sense. Eric's hand landed lightly on my shoulder, making me glance up at him. Perhaps you're asking the wrong questions, he said quietly. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Eric explained, his tone patient, that Hazel's actions may not be as straightforward as they seem. Has she spoken to you recently? Given you any clue about her intentions? His question caught me off guard. I frowned, searching my memory. The truth was, Hazel and I hadn't spoken much since. Well, since Natalie and I had our last argument. I don't know, I admitted reluctantly. Eric chuckled softly, drawing back. That's your problem, Aiden. Hazel isn't just reckless, she's unpredictable. Scarlett's PV. I'd been watching the exchange silently, noting every flicker of frustration on Aiden's face. When Eric finally fell silent, Aiden turned to me, his eyes filled with desperation. Scarlett, he said, his voice laced with urgency. Please, you have to help me. Talk to Roman. Make him see reason. I hesitated, casting a glance at Roman, who stood by the window with his arms folded. His profile was sharp against the gray light filtering through the glass, and his ice-blue eyes were locked on some far-off point in the snow. Roman, I murmured carefully, drawing his attention. The weight of his gaze shifted to me, intense and unyielding. Aiden stepped closer, his hands clenched at his sides. Please, he repeated. Hazel's my sister. I sighed softly. Couldn't we just send her back once Hunter finds her? For a brief moment, Aiden's expression lit with hope, but Roman's reaction sent a chill down my spine. He leaned toward me, his voice dropping to a low whisper, meant only for me. And what are you willing to give me in return, little wolf? His tone sent a flush rushing to my cheeks. Through our mate bond, I could feel the playful undertone beneath his words, but his challenge still made me squirm. Just, I stammered, glancing away. Don't hurt anyone, Roman. His smile deepened in amusement, but he said nothing. Before I could press the issue further, my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. The unknown number flashing on the screen gave me the perfect excuse. I'll take this, I muttered, slipping out of the study without waiting for a response. As Scarlett left, the tension in the room ramped back up. Roman pulled out his phone and dialed a number with deliberate ease. Who are you calling now? I demanded, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. My fears were confirmed when Natalie's voice crackled faintly through the speaker. Roman didn't waste any time on pleasantries. Why? He asked, his tone deadly. Did Hazel bring your enforcers to the Northern Territory? The line went silent. Natalie's hesitation was palpable, even through the phone. I didn't, she began, but Roman cut her off. I suggest, he said coldly, you think carefully before you lie to me again. I swear on our pack bond, Roman. Natalie's voice rang with desperation now. I didn't send her. For a moment, Roman said nothing. His eyes flicked briefly to Eric, who remained calmly seated, then back to some unseen point on the wall. Hunter's men saw someone 2 months ago, Roman said slowly, his words carefully measured. Someone who looked a lot like that wolf. The silence on the other end shifted. It wasn't hesitation anymore, it was something heavier. Eric stiffened slightly, his calm facade cracking just enough to reveal his surprise. I froze completely, barely daring to breathe. Roman, Natalie's voice was almost too quiet to hear. Where? Roman's lips curved into a faint, humorless smile. Get Hazel out of the Northern Territory, he replied smoothly. Now. I'll call her immediately, Natalie agreed without further argument. Now, the call ended abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. You can't do that, I snapped, stepping forward. You can't use that against her. You know how much. Roman's gaze shifted to me, cold and unreadable. The sighting was real. I blinked, my brain refusing to process his words. What? The scent matched, Roman said, his tone flat and devoid of emotion. So did the blood type. It felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. That's impossible, I argued weakly. I treated the poisoning myself. There's no way they survived. You were there, Roman said quietly. But you weren't alone, were you? His words brought the memory crashing back. Natalie's face pale and tear-streaked as she stormed into the room mid-treatment, her shaking hands as she begged me to save. No, I whispered, shaking my head. It doesn't make sense. Roman's icy stare didn't waver, doesn't it? Each word hit like a blow. Had I missed something, made a mistake? Or was the impossible actually possible? Chapter 166, Dangerous Revelations. I stared at Roman, my mind reeling from what he had just disclosed. The room felt heavier, as if the air itself was weighed down by the storm brewing inside me. How? I asked, barely able to form the words. My voice cracked slightly, my throat dry. How is that even possible? Roman's ice-blue eyes locked onto mine, cold as always, but with a glimmer of something darker. They were calculating, sharp, and utterly void of mercy, the Shadow King in his purest form. He didn't answer immediately. His silence only amplified the tension that had already coiled tight around my chest. My mind leapt to every possibility, every scenario where such a claim could hold truth. But it didn't add up. That wolf, I began again, louder this time, but Roman cut me off with a raised hand. Enough, he said, his voice low and commanding. I've told you all you need to know. I clenched my fists, of my wolf stirring restlessly beneath my skin. No, Roman. You can't drop this on me and just demand silence. If it's true, why didn't he contact us? Did you even confirm? Roman's eyes flashed dangerously. Do you think I don't confirm my information, Walsh? He snapped, standing to his full height. The weight of his power was suffocating, and I involuntarily took a step back. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to hold my ground, even though my wolf submitted without question. Then why the silence? I pressed. Why walk away from everything without so much as a word? His jaw tightened, and for a fleeting moment something flickered in his expression. Was it irritation? Sadness? Regret? Even I, as a seasoned healer who'd known him since childhood, couldn't decipher it. That, he said finally, his tone frostier than the snowstorm outside, is not your concern. Not my concern? My teeth ground together, the frustration bubbling hot in my chest. Roman, I said through gritted teeth, leaning forward, this changes everything. Natalie, she. Enough. The word roared through the room, silencing me mid-sentence. My breath hitched as his alpha power surged, wrapping around the space like a poisonous fog. My wolf whimpered involuntarily, clawing for submission. Even though I wasn't part of his pack, the dominance he exuded left no room for defiance. Do not question me on this matter again, he said slowly, each word laced with cruel finality. Focus on your sister, Walsh. My head snapped up, the mention of Hazel fueling a different kind of annoyance. As far as I can tell, Roman continued, his voice sharper now, you have enough trouble keeping your kin out of my territory. The jab stung, but before I could respond, a faint buzzing noise broke through the tension. Roman's gaze shifted from me to Scarlett's ringing phone resting on the side table. The sound of my phone ringing pierced through my thoughts, dragging me out of my inner turmoil. I glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. My thumb hesitated over the decline button. Over the past week, I had grown tired of constant interruptions from borrowed numbers, most of them tied to the winter pack. When the buzzing persisted, I sighed, swiping to pick up the call. Scarlett Winters, I said curtly, my tone leaving little room for pleasantries. Do you have any idea what you've done? Sarah Winters' cold, venomous voice shot back at me, laced with fury and indignation. I exhaled sharply through my nose, my grip on the phone tightening. It's a bit early for dramatics, don't you think? Daniel, she hissed, ignoring my sarcasm entirely. You crippled your own brother, Scarlett. Do you feel accomplished now? Do you feel powerful? The accusation hit me like a slap, but I quickly collected myself. My voice turned icy. My brother? I repeated, my lips curling into a bitter smile. Sarah couldn't see. Excuse me, but the winter pack has done nothing remotely brotherly for me in ever. How dare you say that? Sarah shot back, her voice growing shriller by the second. You're his sister. It's your duty to protect your family. Family. That word had always felt hollow. "Did you protect me, Sarah?" I asked softly, though the venom in my words could cut through steel. Where was this so-called family bond when the Winter Pack let Grace and Daniel torment me as a child? Where was it when Daniel attempted to kidnap me after your precious Grace was sent abroad? Did that slip your mind? There was silence on the other end, the weight of my words hanging heavily between us. "That's not," Sarah began, but I wasn't done. "And what would have happened?" I continued, my voice steady despite the anger bubbling underneath. "If that attempt had succeeded?" Sarah faltered. I could hear her fumbling for justification, for an excuse, but I wouldn't let her find one. "Did you scold him for it?" I asked sarcastically. "Did you at least send Daniel to his room for trying to hand me over to rogues?" "I spoke to him," Sarah said defensively, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. She was cornered and we both knew it. I scoffed. "Let me guess," I said. "You also scolded him for the other times he's tried to harm me, right? Or was that swept under the rug too, along with years of abuse at the hands of your perfect Grace?" "Scarlett, stop," Sarah pleaded, but her voice wavered. "What do you want from us? Is all this revenge not enough? You've ruined us. Grace is poisoned Daniel's hands. And I interrupted sharply, was almost lying dead in the snow because of you and your so-called children. You made this bed, Sarah. Don't act surprised now that you're forced to lie in it." There was a long, heavy silence before she spoke again, her voice trembling. "What do you want from us?" "I want you, Grace, and Daniel to stay out of my life," I said simply. "Don't try to slither your way back in with fake affection. The only thing that comes from proximity to you is harm." Then, without waiting for her reply, I hung up. The silence that followed was almost jarring. I stared down at the phone in my hands, my chest tight with barely contained frustration. I needed a new phone. No, I needed a new number altogether. "Hunter," I called, my voice echoing through the villa. Seconds later, Roman's beta appeared, his expression stoic as always. I wasted no time explaining the situation, my words hurried and clipped. Hunter listened intently before nodding. "I'll handle it, Miss Scarlett." Before he could leave, Roman entered the room, his presence dominating as always. His gaze flicked to the phone in my hand, and a faint smirk tugged at his lips. "Finally decided to cut ties?" he asked lazily, his voice tinged with amusement. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "It's just the borrowed numbers, the constant calls. It's too much." Roman approached me, his hand lightly grazing my shoulder as he stood beside me. "You should have done this weeks ago," he teased, though there was a softness in his voice. His touch was grounding, and for a moment I let myself relax against him. "I guess now's as good a time as any," I admitted. A quiet hum vibrated through our mate bond, warm and soothing. "Good," Roman said firmly, pulling me closer. His lips brushed against my temple, a brief but tender gesture. "No more distractions." Hunter cleared his throat awkwardly, reminding us of his presence. I blushed slightly, pulling away just enough to glance up at Roman, but he didn't let go of me. As Hunter departed to handle my request, Roman's arms tightened around me briefly. $7 million, I murmured suddenly, recalling the center's profits. "That's what the center made last year." Roman arched a brow. "Impressive." His praise warmed my chest, the earlier frustration with Sarah momentarily forgotten. Instead, all I could think about was how safe I felt here. In his arms, in this villa, far, far away from the winters. Chapter 167, Pack Politics and Personal Pain, God's POV. At the Pack Hospital, Marcus Winter paced back and forth, his footsteps heavy with frustration. The sterile hallways, typically a place of healing, felt suffocating under the weight of his fury. His mate, Sarah Winter, sat slumped in the visitor's chair outside Daniel's room. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. She looked defeated, but even so, an undercurrent of stubbornness lingered in her posture. The door to Daniel's temporary room creaked open, and Dr. Williams stepped out. His face was grim, his expression broadcasting what neither Marcus nor Sarah wanted to hear. Marcus's eyes fixed on him immediately, pinning him down like prey. "How bad is it?" Marcus demanded, his voice sharp as a knife. His tone held no patience, no softness, just layers of frustration barely tempered by urgency. Dr. Williams adjusted his glasses, letting out a long breath. "The damage to Alpha Daniel's hands is severe," he began carefully. "Severe how?" Sarah's voice cracked, her words a lifeline she was desperate to cling to. She was already trembling, wringing her hands tightly in her lap. The doctor hesitated. Marcus's alpha glare pushed him to continue. Perhaps irreparable, he said bluntly. Even with accelerated wolf healing, the fractures and damage caused by Roman Thorn's alpha power run deep. Both hands may never regain their full function. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the hallway. Sarah visibly sagged in her chair, one hand flying to her mouth as a sob escaped. No, Daniel. My boy. My only. Her body heaved with the weight of her cries, and the weakness of her reaction only stoked Marcus's simmering rage. This can't be the final word, Marcus almost roared, swinging his head back toward the doctor. You're the Winter Pack's top healer. You will fix him. Dr. Williams bristled for a moment before shaking his head. Alpha Marcus, I will do everything possible, but my healing skills have limits, and what Daniel needs now is rest. Limits? Marcus took a threatening step forward. His towering frame cast a shadow over the smaller pack doctor. You mean to tell me my heir's future, the future alpha of the Winter Pack, ends because of someone else's temper? It's not just about me. Sarah's sobs turned frantic as she staggered to her feet. This happened because of that girl, Scarlet. If she hadn't brought Roman into our lives, if he hadn't betrayed us by siding with him. Marcus whipped around, his rage turning its full brunt onto Sarah. She recoiled as he towered over her, teeth bared. This isn't Scarlet's fault, you blind fool. His words were filled with venom. Tell me, who pushed Daniel to confront Roman? Who begged him to ensure Grace got treatment at any cost?
You.
He pointed at her like a judge delivering a sentence. You, constantly coddling Grace. You, prioritizing her over our sons. You've brought this disaster on our whole family. I was desperate, Sarah stammered, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Grace had another relapse from the silver poisoning. Enough! Marcus's voice was thunderous, silencing her in an instant. His alpha aura surged, sending a ripple of dominance through the space. While you focused on Grace, did you care for a second what you were sacrificing? Do you even care what lavish resources you've burned for a daughter who isn't even yours? Sarah blinked through her tears, struggling to form coherent responses. But Grace she's still our responsibility. Our responsibility is to this pack, not to the girl who brought ruin upon our family, Marcus snarled, his fists clenched. We let Scarlet fall through the cracks, and we juggle Grace like a fragile egg. What did that give us? Daniel with broken hands, this pack on the brink of collapse. Sarah's face twisted in anguish. Don't abandon Grace now, not when. She has no one else. Marcus's rage erupted as he slammed his fist against the wall, the sound echoing through the hallway. You've lost perspective. Do you think I'll sit back and let your endless favoritism destroy us? He loomed closer, his alpha energy thickening the air almost unbearably. From now on, Daniel is out of your hands. Marcus, please. Sarah reached for him, but he stepped back, his face cold as stone. You are more of a liability than she is, he spat, each word meticulous and dripping with resolve. Get out of my sight, Sarah. Pack your things. You can take your precious Grace in my pack territory by sunset. Her eyes widened in horror. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head in disbelief. You're banishing me. Marcus, no. The pack, our family. Marcus flicked a hand toward nearby pack enforcers. Escort her out, no exceptions. The enforcers approached Sarah with heavy footsteps. She scrambled, clutching at Marcus's arm, but he pushed her off with ease. I have no mate I can trust, no wife to rely on. All I see is someone who protects the cancer eating away at this pack. Grace needs me. Her voice soared in desperation as she tried to plead against her forced removal. Then go with her. Marcus's yell shook the windows, his alpha energy suppressing her until she fell silent. That's the only thing you're good for, a caretaker for your cursed cause. Whimpers escaped her lips as she was dragged out. Alexander, standing at a distance and visibly sharp-eyed, observed silently. Anger flicked through him, not at Sarah, but at Marcus's handling of family matters. Not only had Marcus allowed this entire situation with Scarlet and Roman to spiral out of control, but now he was exiling Aluna without much-needed political consultation. However, Alexander knew better than to interfere. Marcus turned his gaze back toward the pack doctor. Do what you must to keep Daniel breathing, Williams. But for Marcus, The day's chaos wasn't over. Not even slightly. I sat perched by the large glass window in Roman's study, my legs tucked beneath me as I watched the snow gently fall. Outside, everything seemed so still, peaceful even. The endless stretch of white made the chaos of the day feel like a world away. It reminded me fleetingly of my childhood spent at the Eastern Territories, before packs collided, before political schemes and rogue attacks. The memories were warm, like an old fire burning low. Roman's warm breath tickled my ear as his hands slid around my waist, startling me slightly. He pulled me effortlessly into his arms, his energy wrapping around me intimately despite the cold air outside the window. "What's on your mind, little wolf?" His voice was low, smooth as ever, though soft for me alone. I craned my neck slightly to meet his eyes. "Snow." He chuckled softly at my simple reply, resting his chin lightly against the top of my head. "Not exactly a groundbreaking thought," he teased. I grinned faintly, leaning into him. "I was thinking, I never properly built a snowman." "You're joking," he quipped, raising a brow. "A healer, a sharpshooter, someone who's trained in physical combat, and you're saying snowmen escaped you?" "Exactly." My grin widened. Moments like this, where we could tease one another without the weight of war or packs, were far too rare not to enjoy. He rolled his eyes in affection, kissing the side of my temple. Adorable. My mind shifted, vaguely recalling earlier conversations. "By the way, Aiden told me something interesting," I started mischievously. Roman's eyes immediately sharpened with curiosity. "Go on." "He said alphas tend to be quite inconsiderate when it comes to." I trailed off playfully, leaving a pointed pause. His head tilted slightly, recognition sparking in his expression. "When it comes to mating, you mean?" His slow-formed smirk instantly filled with challenge. I nodded. "Precisely that." "And do you agree?" He stepped back ever so slightly to let me see his face fully, his tone towing the line between amusement and authority. I knew the smirk wouldn't last. Roman wasn't the type to leave playful banter unchallenged. Still, someone had to keep his ego balanced. "I do," I replied cheekily, crossing my arms. "Empirical evidence, after all." Just as his expression took on something more threateningly playful, Natalie's name flashed across the phone's screen, cutting the build-up short. Her screech came barreling through even before Roman could greet her, chaos dripping from every syllable. "Roman, you have to send enforcement immediately. Hazel Walsh, I've lost where she disappeared. Things went..." Roman grimaced at the obvious lie, while I inwardly laughed at Natalie's clumsy deception. Chapter 168. Hidden Hope. The sound of the snow steadily pattering against the large windows filled the living room with a quiet rhythm. I sat curled up on the plush couch with a blanket draped over me. Roman was across the room at his desk, his tall frame leaned back slightly in the chair, his ice-blue eyes glinting with an intensity that only he could bring to something as mundane as a phone call. It was Natalie on the other end. Her raised voice easily carried over to me, even though Roman held the phone with his usual detached calm. "You've barely said a word, Roman," Natalie complained, her voice more exasperated than I'd heard her in a long time. "Why are you so quiet? Is Scarlett okay? You're not punishing her for anything, are you?" Roman's lips twitched in amusement, his steely demeanor unwavering. "Worried about Scarlett, are you?" he replied dryly, ignoring her question entirely. "How sweet." "Roman," Natalie snapped, her frustration evident even through the poor phone connection. "Don't toy with me. I want to know what's going on with her and Hazel. Why is she unreachable? You think I don't notice when things go wrong?" Roman's smirk faded into something sharper. His tone turned colder immediately. "Why do you care about Hazel's whereabouts?" His words were like ice. "Wouldn't you know better than anyone why she's suddenly gone silent?" "What are you trying to imply?" Natalie asked defensively, her voice strained but no longer raised. There was a pause before she added, almost inaudibly, "I haven't spoken to her since I gave her my suggestions. If she's done something reckless, I'm not responsible." "Suggestions," Roman repeated, his voice laced with derision. "You're either a terrible liar or she's keeping you in the dark. Either way, guess what? Now she's your problem to untangle, not mine." Natalie's voice cracked slightly as she countered, There's no way." "You're saying Hazel's gone rogue? Why? After all the perks she gained, it doesn't make any sense." "You're the one who trained her, Natalie," Roman replied coolly. Why don't you tell me what she wants?" There was a charged silence over the line, and in the distance, I could hear Natalie's muffled breathing. Something in her tone changed when she next spoke. "Forget Hazel," she said, brushing the topic aside abruptly. "Roman, you said someone saw someone near the Healing Springs? Do you mean that someone has nothing to do with Scarlet or Hazel?" Roman cut her off before she could finish. "But your interest says plenty." "Roman, please," she interrupted, her voice breaking into a pleading tone that I barely recognized. "If there's even a chance, if there's proof." Roman sighed deeply, the edge in his gaze softening momentarily. I knew he loathed drawing out things with Natalie, but he also wasn't one to act rashly, even for his adoptive sister. Noticing his rare hesitation, I gave the hem of his sweater a soft tug, silently urging him to respond. Roman glanced down at me, his intense expression briefly softening at whatever he read in my eyes. His shoulders eased fractionally before he spoke again. "Tell me exactly what you're asking for," he said, leaning forward slightly. His tone was colder than before, but more focused. It was clear this wasn't a subject he wanted to engage in. "I need to know if it's true," Natalie said quickly, her words tumbling out now that the chance had been offered. He can't really be alive, but someone saw him? Why didn't the Shadow Organization? Why didn't you?" "Hunter's team reportedly encountered someone near the neutral territory," Roman said, keeping his words measured. "Near the Healing Springs, far from here. But listen carefully, Natalie. He didn't recognize Hunter. If it's him, he wouldn't just... not after all this time." "It has to be him," she argued, the desperation bleeding into her voice. "You never found his body, Roman. You said the silver poisoning was too severe, but..." "I watched him die in front of you," Roman said harshly, cutting through her words with a brutal reminder. His ice-blue eyes hardened, locking onto a distant point past me. "What are you expecting to find out there?" Natalie faltered. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I need to see for myself." I stayed quiet during the exchange, sensing the tension thickening between the siblings. Their bond had always been strong, but this discussion held a layer of pain and miscommunication that left me aching for both of them. The name Michael Caine echoed faintly in my mind, his memory clearer now with each moment. "Natalie," Roman said, his voice dropping dangerously low, "if he's even alive, don't forget the risk. Don't go running off and..." "I'll make my way there," she interrupted, her tone sharper now, regaining an edge of resolve. "I'm not sitting on my hands while there's even the smallest chance. You're not stopping me, Roman." "Approve your escorts," he insisted, though his frustration was palpable. "Hunter will send..." "No," Natalie snapped back, the fire returning to her voice. "I have my own plans." Then, as if to end the discussion, she hung up abruptly, leaving silence ringing in her absence. Scarlett's POV. The moment the call ended, Roman let out a low growl, rubbing his temples as the weight of the conversation bore down on him. I reached out hesitantly, placing a hand on his arm. "Michael Caine," I murmured, watching for his reaction. "That's who she meant, wasn't it?" Roman's eyes shifted to meet mine. That one look told me everything. He didn't confirm or deny it. He didn't need to. The name hung in the room like haunting music, impossible to avoid. Memories surfaced in my own mind. Michael had been striking in every way, different from Roman or most alpha wolves. His energy was calm but strong, a steady constant instead of dominating chaos. He wasn't here long before his supposed death. "She changed after him," I said softly. Her whole demeanor, her appearance, all of it shifted because of him. Roman didn't respond, but the creases in his brow spoke volumes. I could tell he carried the weight of what happened, even if he rarely showed it outright. I sighed, shaking off the somber atmosphere and offering him a small smile instead. "You don't think it's actually, do you?" "I think," he said carefully, "it's reckless to put any faith in this. People don't come back the way you want them to, if they come back at all." I nodded, understanding the doubt, but a part of me still wished for a miracle. If Michael truly was alive in the neutral territory, Natalie deserved the chance to see him, even just to say goodbye properly. Roman noticed the way my hands had started trembling. Without a word, he shrugged off his thick coat and draped it around my shoulders. I blinked up at him, mildly protesting. "I'm not cold," I lied. His lips tugged into a soft smirk. "You're always cold, silly wolf." Dinner that evening was quieter than usual. Snow continued falling heavily outside, blanketing the villa in an eerie kind of silence. I stirred my bowl of steamy pigeon soup absently, noticing Roman's unwavering attention from across the table. "You're wondering about Aiden and Eric," I pointed out before he could even voice his thoughts. "They're missing the meal," Roman said simply, though his tone made it clear he was less than impressed by their absences. "Aiden's probably looking for Hazel," I guessed, setting my spoon down and leaning forward slightly. "What about Eric?" Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. "That man is always where you don't expect him, and where you don't need him." I frowned at his answer, but didn't press further. Instead, my thoughts circled back to Hazel, and I hesitated before speaking again. "Roman," I said softly, "go easy on her. I know she has a reputation, but Aiden, she's still his sister." Roman didn't speak immediately, but when he finally did, his words were calm, almost dismissive. "She'll survive with a few bruises." "Bruises," I repeated, half skeptical. "I'd like to think even bruises won't ruin her. Tan?" Roman raised an eyebrow at my odd retort, but didn't comment. At that moment, the door creaked open, and Hunter stepped into the room. He nodded respectfully before addressing Roman. "Hazel's enforcers have been dealt with," he reported curtly, but Hazel herself escaped upon arrival. Before either I or Roman could react, Aiden appeared in the hallway, overhearing Hunter's report. His face paled, his eyes wide with worry. "She what?" he exclaimed, his voice breaking slightly in disbelief. Chapter 169, Dangerous Games. Roman's fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the dining table. The rhythmic sound filled the tension-laden air, echoing faintly against the villa's quiet walls. Aiden sat to my left, darting uneasy glances between Roman and me, his palms flat against the table as if grounding himself. His desperation was evident, written all over his furrowed brow and clenched jaw. I avoided looking at him and focused on the intricate embroidery of the tablecloth instead. Roman's earlier words echoed in my head like a command. Mercy was a weakness. My own experiences had taught me as much. Hazel Walsh had tried to kidnap me. Her recklessness could have led to unimaginable consequences. I wouldn't intercede for her, no matter how much Aiden pleaded silently. "Sitting there in silence won't change what she's done," Roman said coolly, his ice-blue gaze falling heavily on Aiden. "She's my sister," Aiden began weakly, lifting his head to meet Roman's piercing stare. "She doesn't pose a danger to you. Or to Scarlet. She's reckless, that's all." "Reckless?" Roman's voice was soft, almost curious, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. He leaned back leisurely, though the tension in his posture was palpable, like a predator before pouncing. "Reckless is abandoning Natalie's enforcers and sneaking into my territory. What do you think was her goal, Walsh?" Aiden hesitated, his lips trembling slightly as he searched for an argument, anything to defend Hazel. "She doesn't mean harm." "Doesn't mean harm." Roman repeated the words slowly, like savoring each syllable. Then he laughed softly, a hollow, humorless sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "You must think I'm a fool to accept that excuse." "Roman," Aiden pleaded, his hands clutching at the edge of the table now. "She's unpredictable, yes, but she's not." He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "She's not dangerous." "Unpredictable is worse," Roman replied sharply, cutting Aiden's sentence short. He gestured toward me without looking in my direction. "And she targeted Scarlet? You want me to overlook that?" The weight of his words settled heavily between us. Aiden's gaze flickered to mine, his expression a mix of desperation and resignation. I avoided meeting his eyes. Any words I could offer would only worsen the situation. Hazel hadn't just made a mistake, she had crossed the line with no regard for the consequences. Roman had every reason to target her, every right to ensure she didn't come close to us again. "What are you going to do?" Aiden finally asked, his voice brittle. Roman tilted his head slightly, his gaze glinting like sharpened steel. He didn't answer. Instead, his eyes swept toward me, as if silently reinforcing the reminder of why Hazel's actions warranted such measures. "Scarlet will remain by my side," Roman said smoothly, directing the words at Aiden, though his attention lingered on me. "Especially with Hazel involved." "I have work," I interjected hesitantly, finally lifting my eyes. "I was supposed to go to the healing center tomorrow. I can't just—" "You don't need to go anymore," Hunter interrupted as he entered the room. His imposing frame commanded attention, his tone straightforward and resolute. My brows furrowed in confusion. What do you mean I don't need to go? Why not? Before Hunter could respond further, the jarring tone of my phone vibrating against the table made me jump. I glanced at the screen. Claire Evans. A sinking feeling settled in my chest as I answered the call, the room's oppressiveness temporarily fading into the background. Miss Winters. Claire's voice was cautious, tentative even. I have some unsettling news from the center. What happened? I asked quickly, gripping the phone tightly. It's Northern Medical Supplies? She hesitated, and the mention of the company made my stomach drop. They terminated the contract with immediate effect. What? I echoed, barely believing what I was hearing. My voice grew sharper, more demanding. Why? That contract's been stable for years. That's what I thought too, Claire said, her voice tinged with unease. But they won't budge. They said their decision is final and refused to give detailed reasons. And, she paused, clearly reluctant to continue. And, I prompted, the knot in my chest tightening, they also aren't refunding the advance payment we made for the next 2 quarters. I fell silent, utterly taken aback. My mind raced. Northern Medical Supplies had been one of our biggest and most reliable partners. There was no logical reason for them to terminate the contract, let alone keep the advance payment. Have you spoken to their management directly? I asked, trying to remain calm despite the growing storm inside me. Yes, but they refused to elaborate, Claire admitted. They've completely cut us off. Their actions made no sense. The partnership had been mutually beneficial, thriving even. Losing them would cripple parts of the healing center's operations. It wasn't just about the supplies. It was about the trust and stability they'd represented. I'll review the contract files tomorrow, I said finally, my tone firm despite the rising anxiety within me. Bring everything you have to the villa. Of course, Miss Winters, Claire replied quickly. I'll gather all the relevant documents tonight. As I ended the call, Roman's voice caught my attention. He and Aiden were locked in a heated argument. I caught bits and pieces of their exchange. Aiden blaming Roman's enforcers for Hazel's disappearance. Hazel chose her path, Roman snapped, his tone final. The weight of the tension between them pulled my thoughts from the contract and back to the room. Returning to the dining room, I caught the tail end of Roman giving orders to Hunter. Find her, Roman instructed coolly. Tonight. Hunter nodded, his expression unreadable, and turned to leave. Aiden followed him swiftly, his determination to be involved clear from the tight set of his jaw. Roman's gaze softened the moment his eyes found mine again. He motioned for me to come closer, and before I could say a word, he pulled me onto his lap. The faint blush on my cheeks didn't go unnoticed. Romantically clingy wasn't how I'd describe Roman to anyone, but in private, or even semi-private settings like this, he seemed to revel in making me blush. Roman, I murmured nervously, aware of the servants moving in and out of the room. He smirked. Don't hide, Scarlett. Let them see. I blinked at him, still unused to his boldness in displaying our mate bond so openly. His hand brushed the side of my neck, his thumb grazing one of the claiming marks left from our earlier intimacy. The heat in my chest rose to my face as I swatted his hand away lightly. How's the injury? He asked softly, though his teasing undertone betrayed his question. My cheeks flame instantly. It's fine, I muttered, avoiding eye contact. He chuckled under his breath, clearly amused by my embarrassment, before shifting gears. What was the call about? His brows furrowed slightly as he studied my face, the humor fading to concern. You're upset. Northern Medical Supplies terminated our contract, I admitted, my voice tightly controlled. Does it matter? Roman asked, his cold pragmatism coming through. You're leaving soon anyway. My staff depends on that partnership, I argued. The center depends on it. I can't just... He raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. You're returning to the Eastern Territories. It's time to focus on what matters. They matter, I said firmly. There was silence for a moment, thick with unspoken tension. Finally, Roman sighed, a faint glimmer of exasperation crossing his face. The owner of Northern Medical Supplies owes me a favor, he said simply. I'll make the call. That admission caught me off guard, and I hesitated before speaking. You'll help? Without warning, his expression shifted, his smirk returning as he leaned in close, too close. His ice-blue eyes locked onto mine, full of intent and something deeper. The corner of his lips quirked upwards as he answered, soft but laced with meaning. You. Chapter 170, Morning Revelations. Early mornings at the villa always had a peculiar stillness, as though the world itself held its breath. The air carried a faint chill, crisp with the remnants of the snowstorm from the night before. I stood in the hallway outside Roman's study, ready to report on Hazel Walsh. The moment I raised my knuckles to knock on the study door, a movement caught my attention from the corner of my eye. Roman was exiting Scarlett's room. The door closed softly behind him as he stepped out, and I froze mid-action. Roman, the ever-composed Shadow King, was not quite in his usual pristine state. His robe hung loosely, parting just enough to reveal faint, fresh scratches across his chest. My eyes inadvertently darted to the marks, recognizing them immediately for what they were. My alpha rarely indulged in appearances of vulnerability, even ones earned in moments of passion. I quickly averted my gaze and greeted him respectfully. Alpha. He stopped mid-step, briefly looking at me. His expression remained impassive, but there was a slight curl to the corner of his mouth, almost like a smothered smirk. Hunter, he acknowledged, his voice deeper, quieter than usual, thick with control. Meet me in the study in 5 minutes. He walked past me at a calm, measured pace, leaving the faint scent of his mate Bond hanging in the air. I stood still for a moment, gathering my thoughts before heading to the study to wait as instructed. The soft creak of the door announced Roman's entrance. He was now properly dressed in casual yet immaculate clothes, a stark contrast to the unguarded state I had witnessed moments prior. He carried an air of command, filling the room as only he could. Trailing him was Aiden Walsh, who looked as if he hadn't slept in days. His disheveled hair and weary eyes gave away his mental state before he said a word. He seemed burdened, not surprising given the chaos surrounding Hazel. Roman strode to his desk without pause, gesturing for us to sit, though I remained standing out of habit. Hunter, Roman began, his voice sharp yet steady, what's the latest on Hazel Walsh? I stepped forward, keeping my tone professional. She left the neutral territory altogether, I reported. She evaded capture and moved beyond my enforcer's reach. Aiden jerked upright in his seat at my words, his exhaustion giving way to alarm. What? Left? Without being caught? His voice was incredulous, laced with mounting frustration. How is that possible? What happened between her and your enforcers? She avoided Natalie's personnel entirely, I clarified, careful with my words. She didn't engage with anyone. My enforcers cornered her at the borders, but she slipped past them, and once she crossed the perimeter, we lost her trail. Roman raised an eyebrow but remained quiet, allowing Aiden to process the information. She just disappeared? Aiden sounded almost defeated as he leaned back, running a hand over his face. It was clear the news rattled him more than anticipated. Roman, breaking his silence, lit a cigarette, the faint click of the lighter oddly loud in the tense room. Smoke curled upward as he leaned back in his chair, his piercing gaze settling on Aiden. This was not a missed opportunity, Roman said coldly. Your sister is resourceful, and she knows the stakes too well. Her move was calculated. Aiden's hand dropped to his side as he stared at Hunter again, his voice tight. Natalie must have offered her something, money, status, something significant. Hazel wouldn't have risked coming here otherwise. I nodded slightly, though my alpha's gaze was still locked on me. That's what makes the situation troubling. Hazel was only in our borders briefly. She likely took what she could from Natalie and couldn't gamble further. She ran away, Aiden concluded bitterly. Took whatever payment Natalie promised her and bolted. Great. Just great. Now she's left everyone in the dark, including me. Roman exhaled slowly, his cigarette smoke curling faintly between us. He had yet to respond fully, but made no effort to interrupt the exchange. Aiden was spiraling, though. It was obvious. How does this help anyone? Aiden continued, his tone sharp with frustration. Now Natalie will have even more reason to dig into this, and we're back at square one. Roman leaned forward, resting his hands on the desk. His calm but commanding presence immediately halted Aiden's rant. Natalie's interests have shifted, Roman said evenly. His measured words cut through the haze of frustration in the room. She's likely back in the Eastern Territories by now. The statement caused visible relief on Aiden's face, though the reprieve was short-lived. He hesitated before quietly asking, "Can we keep this from her? At least for now?" Roman's steely gaze narrowed slightly. Aiden quickly added, if Natalie knows Hazel ducked out of her agreement, it'll escalate things unnecessarily. She'll blow it out of proportion. I, for one, knew Natalie would inevitably uncover the truth. Didn't she always? Keeping secrets from Natalie is temporary at best, I pointed out bluntly. It's only a matter of... Hunter, Aiden interrupted, raising his hands in exasperation. Can you not state the obvious for once? I'm barely holding it together as is. I stayed silent, though I raised an eyebrow at his reaction. Roman stubbed out his cigarette abruptly, rising from his chair in one smooth motion. His gaze lingered on Aiden briefly before sliding back to me. Enough, he said, dismissing the situation with finality. His tone indicated there was no room for further debate. Leave Hazel to cool off. Focus on what's ahead. Scarlett's POV. The soft murmur of voices outside my door tugged at me as I began to stir awake. The morning sunlight seeped faintly through the curtains, casting warm rays across the room. I pushed myself up slowly, wincing slightly as my still-healing injuries made themselves known. On the bedside table was a glass of water. It was such a simple gesture, yet so uncharacteristically thoughtful for Roman that I couldn't help but smile. The past few days played through my head like a whirlwind. So much had changed, shifted between us. The bed I once considered a singular sanctuary was now unfamiliar with the lingering warmth of another presence. His presence. The idea should have felt strange or even unsettling, but instead I felt comforted. I caught myself lingering too long on the thought and shook my head as if to clear it. I had to be careful. Our relationship had gone through a stark transformation. From siblings to something far more intimate, the lines of our shared history were now irrevocably blurred. The creak of the door snapped me out of my reverie, and I glanced over to see Roman stepping into the room. He moved with his usual calm confidence, though his gaze softened when it met mine. Still groggy from sleep, I let words tumble from my mouth before I could think them through. Brother? Roman froze for half a second, then slowly quirked an eyebrow. Brother? He repeated, his voice laced with amusement. I blinked, snapping fully awake as heat rushed to my face. My words failed me spectacularly as I fumbled to correct the slip. Walking over to the bedside, Roman leaned down, his intense gaze locking onto mine. Say it properly, he murmured, his tone low and coaxing. My name, little wolf. I swallowed hard, my tongue catching. Despite the familiar playfulness in his tone, the intimacy behind the request left me utterly flustered. I remained silent, though my racing thoughts likely betrayed me. He huffed softly, leaning closer still. Before I could react, he pressed his teeth lightly against my neck, a playful nip that sent a jolt through me. Roman, I gasped, my voice high with surprise. My hand instinctively flew to the spot as I shot him a glare. He chuckled darkly, easily dodging my half-hearted swat. That's better, he teased, straightening up but not entirely leaving my space. Do you have any idea, I started, my voice laced with exasperation, how hard it's going to be to explain these marks? He merely shrugged, his smirk never wavering. I've already spoken to Luna Catherine. His offhand response froze me entirely. My eyes widened in alarm. You spoke to Mother? His smirk grew wider as he stepped back casually, leaving me to wonder just how much trouble he had created in my name. Chapter 171, Maternal Concerns, Scarlett's P. I leaned against the edge of the bed, my mind tangled in the web of thoughts that refused to unravel. Roman stood by the window, the sunlight catching the edge of his profile. He said it so casually last night, he just told her. Told Luna Catherine. What exactly? Roman, I said, trying to keep the nervousness out of my voice, though my shaky breath betrayed me. What did you say to her? He turned, calm as ever. Those piercing blue eyes locked onto mine, and the corner of his lips pulled upward in amusement. I told her the truth, that you're mine now. What else matters? His simplicity irritated me. That's it? No context? No explanation about how we went from siblings to this? My hand gestured vaguely between us. Roman crossed the room, his towering frame closing the distance in seconds. He tilted my chin up, meeting my eyes. Scarlett, she's not going to eat you alive. Relax. How can I relax? My frustration boiled over, and I jerked my chin out of his hold. She raised me, Roman. How do you think she's going to feel knowing that her adopted daughter is now her son's mate? Do you think she'll just accept it with open arms? Roman chuckled low. the sound vibrating through his chest. Have more faith in her. She's probably always known. Shock froze my tongue for a second. What? She's Luna, Catherine, he said, as if that explained everything. His fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face. She's always seen things most people miss. She saw this coming. I wanted to argue, to contest his perfect confidence, but a part of me remembered how Luna Catherine often had sharp insights into things, her knowing gaze cutting through everyone's pretense. What if she really had known all along? Still, the knot in my stomach didn't untangle. Roman seemed to notice because his lips quirked into that teasing smirk I both loved and hated. Come now, he said, gently tugging at my hand. Get dressed. We'll go out for breakfast. I blinked at him, confused by the sudden change in topic. What? Why? You'd rather stay here and overthink all morning? He cut an eyebrow, knowing full well what my answer would be. But I shook my head. No, I have work. Emma and Claire are coming over, and don't think you're off the hook about helping me with Northern medical supplies. I crossed my arms, raising my chin. You promised to figure out why they terminated their contract with my center. Have you forgotten already? Roman's smirk widened. Forgotten? No, but I love how determined you are about keeping them afloat. Your compassion for your staff? Admirable. I narrowed my eyes at him suspiciously. He always knew how to wrap compliments around something that felt more like teasing. Don't deflect, I said sternly. You're going to help, right? There was a flicker of something in his eyes before he nodded. Of course, I'll handle it. His agreement brought some relief, but there was still so much swirling in my head. Luna Catherine, the center, Northern medical supplies. It felt endless. Then his phone rang, cutting through the tension. Roman glanced at the screen, his demeanor sharpening instantly. I have to deal with this, he said, voice clipped, lips tightening into a firm line. I barely had time to respond before he left, the strong, commanding aura that only Roman could bring lingering in his absence. Aiden Walsh's POV. I stabbed my fork into a slice of apple on my plate, glancing sideways at Scarlett as we shared a quiet breakfast. Well, it was quiet on her end. On mine? My head was spinning. My sister Hazel had left the neutral territory. I still couldn't wrap my mind around it. Not just leaving, but abandoning Natalie's people as well. What the hell was she thinking? She left as soon as she arrived, I muttered, more to myself than Scarlett. She looked up, eyes widening slightly in surprise. What? Why? I exhaled harshly, shaking my head. She knew how deep the trouble she'd stirred up was. Roman, Natalie, neither of them tolerates betrayal. And Hazel, she's reckless but not suicidal. Scarlett's brows furrowed, her fork hovering midair. So, she fled before anyone could catch her? Exactly, I said bitterly, stabbing another piece of fruit. But she didn't just flee. She took funds from Natalie for God knows what plan involving you, and then left. She's practically inviting chaos to the European territories. Natalie won't take that well. Scarlett's mouth fell open. I can't believe she'd provoke Roman and Natalie. Does she have a death wish? I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. Who knows what goes on in her mind? It's a gamble either way. But when Natalie finds out, I grimaced at the thought. Hazel wouldn't just face Roman's wrath anymore. By then, it'd be a miracle if either of us survived the fallout. Her voice softened with curiosity. What's she even trying to achieve, Aiden? I hesitated. Talking about Hazel's constant chaos was one thing, but Scarlett was sharp, and I didn't feel like answering the harder questions she might ask. So I changed the subject. So, I started, wiggling my brows teasingly, what's it like now? She blinked, confused. What's what like? You and Roman, I smirked, leaning forward and dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, as mates, how's that working out? Scarlett's face turned beet red instantly. Perfect. Just the reaction I was fishing for. What kind of question is that? She sputtered, nearly knocking her glass of water over. Before I could push further, possibly embarrassing her more, Roman walked into the room. I hadn't even noticed his arrival until his foot collided with my shin under the table. The force was like being struck by a wrecking ball. I yelped and pulled back instantly. Roman? What the hell? But when I looked up, his stone-cold glare shut me up faster than anything else could. Ah, right. I forgot Roman could and would kill me if I crossed the line. Scarlett, I need to talk to you. Roman said smoothly, completely ignoring my existence as if I weren't groaning and clutching my leg in pain. Scarlett looked visibly relieved to have an escape from my teasing. She shot me a look that screamed, "Serves you right," before following Roman's lead. Scarlett's POV. As soon as Roman and I left the dining room, I rounded on him, my earlier relief replaced by irritation. "This is your fault," I accused, poking his chest with my finger. Roman raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering across his face. "What exactly is my fault?" "Everyone," I gestured wildly, "knowing us. Aiden asking me, I don't even want to repeat his questions." Roman chuckled, catching my hand mid-poke. "Let them talk, Scarlett. What does it matter?" I pinched his arm in retaliation, earning a faint wince. "It matters to me. People should mind their own business." "You're adorable when you're flustered," he said smoothly, pulling me closer and wrapping his arms around me. His lips brushed against my temple, his soothing presence melting some of my frustration. But not enough to forget the situation entirely. I muttered under my breath, "I'm going to end up biting you again if you don't stop smirking at me." Like Roman grinned wider. "Wouldn't have it any other way, little wolf." Chapter 172, Bitter Confrontations. The morning began peacefully enough, but peace doesn't last long in this world, especially not in Roman's villa. I sat by the window in the study, letting the sunlight warm my skin. The snow created an unbroken white blanket across the ground. It was perfect, too perfect. Inside, my thoughts were far messier. Roman had left earlier with Aiden. His directions had been clear. Stay in the villa with Mrs. Wilson and avoid contact with anyone suspicious. Naturally, he expected trouble. The knock at the door pulled me from my restless thoughts. Mrs. Wilson stepped inside, her polite yet firm demeanor settling the air instantly. "Miss Scarlett," she said, her voice skirting the edge of hesitance. "Sarah Winter is at the security gate. She's requesting to see you." I stiffened at the mention of that name. A rush of memories surfaced, memories I worked hard to quell. My face remained calm even as my hand tightened on the armrest. "No," I said firmly, my voice as cold as the snow outside. "Tell her to leave." Mrs. Wilson did not argue. She gave a small bow before moving to exit. But my reprieve lasted only seconds. My phone lit up. Emma Chase. She always had a knack for calling at the worst times. "What now, Emma?" I answered, struggling to keep impatience out of my tone. "Your loving mother is creating quite the drama outside," that Emma said dryly, her tone dripping with derision. "What do you mean?" I frowned, already dreading the answer. "She's kneeling by my car." Emma exhaled noisily, crying, begging, as if she's the star in some tragic play. Her words hit me like a slap. "Kneeling? Yes, and it's ridiculous." Emma's voice turned sharper, her frustration barely contained. "Scarlett, I've seen mothers fight tooth and nail for their children. I've seen love that is blindingly selfless. This is a show. This is a performance to wring something out of you." I pinched the bridge of my nose. I told Mrs. Wilson to turn her away. "Well," Emma continued, her words laced with bitterness, "she's making quite the scene. She doesn't look like she's planning on leaving. I can practically feel the guilt trap she's setting up. I hate seeing her actions being labeled as a mother's love. It's an insult to real mothers, Scarlett." Through the hum of Emma's voice, I could hear faint sobbing in the background. I stared out the window, watching the snowflakes fall in endless silence. It weighed on me, even though I wanted to shout that it shouldn't. After a long pause, I exhaled. "Fine." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Emma asked, surprised. "Bring her in," I said quietly. "But you and Claire wait outside. I'll talk to her first." Mrs. Wilson led Sarah into the villa a short while later. The moment I caught sight of her, a battle churned inside me. This was the wolf who gave me life. Yet, she was also the one who had stood by as Grace, her precious Grace, tried to destroy me. Her hands trembled as she lowered herself into the seat across from me. Her eyes were red, tears streaking her face, though they did nothing to soften my resolve. Mrs. Wilson remained nearby, silent but watchful as Roman had instructed. "Say whatever it is you came here for," I said flatly, breaking the silence. "I don't have all day." As I sat across from Scarlett, my real daughter, my emotions were a storm. The child I once held in my arms as a baby now looked at me like a stranger. Or, worse, an enemy. Her icy tones stung, but I couldn't afford to focus on that. Not now. My purpose today was Daniel. How could you allow this? I began, my voice shaking with anger and desperation. How could you let that outsider hurt your own brother? Scarlett's emerald eyes didn't flicker. Her expression was carved from stone. Do you even know how severe Daniel's injuries are? I pressed on, unable to stop myself. His hands, they might never heal fully. His future as alpha of the winter pack is ruined, and it's because of you. The sound of her teacup slamming against the table echoed in the room. It startled me, but what followed chilled me even more. Outsider? She repeated, her voice low and sharp as a dagger. You want to lecture me after everything your so-called family has done to me? I blinked, unsure of how to respond to the venom in her words. What do you mean by that? Haven't we? She cut me off. Why did you come here, Sarah? Was it to lecture me? To interrogate me about Grace's failure? Or is this about Daniel's inability to clean up Grace's mess? I felt heat rush to my face, a mixture of anger and shame. What do you want? I snapped, my voice breaking despite myself. Scarlett's face remained calm, unnervingly so. She turned to the housekeeper, her voice steady. Arrange for Daniel's immediate discharge from the healing den. Her words were like a death sentence. Panic set in. No, you can't do that. The words spilled out of me before I could stop them. Scarlett turned back to me, her expression as cold as the snow outside. Why not? She said. His injuries aren't life-threatening, are they? He doesn't belong in a place that could be used for someone truly in need. My chest tightened with fury. You would really turn your back on your brother like this? After everything? Her laugh was hollow. Brother? Are we dragging that word out now? Interesting. What's that supposed to mean? I demanded. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. It means you lost the right to call me family the moment you let Grace manipulate everything. Again and again, you chose her. Over what? Over me? Over Daniel? Look what's become of your perfect little daughter now. I flinched. I never abandoned you, I shouted, defensive. I tried to keep the family together. You tried to keep me in line, Scarlett countered, each word hitting like a slap. You used your influence to cover everything, like with Grace's attack. My throat felt dry. That's not fair. No, she interrupted, her voice rising slightly, but never losing its focus. What wasn't fair was nearly losing my life. What wasn't fair were the years I was treated like an afterthought to Grace. What wasn't fair was being told to accept the blame, again and again, because it was easier for you to protect her. The silence that followed her words was deafening. You would have destroyed me, Scarlett said, her voice soft now, but no less cutting. For the first time, emotions cracked through the resolve I tried to keep intact. She looked at me as if weighing her next words. Tell me, why am I wrong? Pain ripped at me. I couldn't find the answer. All I could do was clutch at weak excuses, my pride refusing to crumble. How can you think of me that way? I whispered, tears slipping down my cheeks. Scarlett's face didn't soften. I had hoped that you'd learned something by now, that you'd seen the mess you've created and learned to clean it up. Mrs. Wilson began moving toward the door to carry out Scarlett's order. I panicked, blocking her. Scarlett, I begged, barely recognizing the brokenness in my own voice. Please don't do this. Daniel is your... I nearly said it again. I stopped short when I saw the flicker of fury in her eyes. I swallowed hard. The anger inside me was an inferno. Could she not see what her actions had done to us? To me? I sacrificed everything to make peace, and yet here she sat, so unforgiving. But none of that mattered now. None of my pride, none of my anger. Daniel needed me, and if swallowing my pride was the cost, so be it. Please, I whispered one last time, desperate and defeated. Just please. Chapter 173, Desperate Measures. I stepped out of Roman's seaside villa, clutching my coat tightly against the sharp wind that bit through the fabric. My breath came out in visible puffs, but it wasn't the cold that made me tremble. It was anger and helplessness. Scarlett. Those cold, detached eyes of hers lingered in my mind, her unconcerned expression as I begged for the sake of my family. I couldn't believe the girl I had raised, nurtured, clothed, and cared for could turn into something so cruel. But cruel she was. Not a single shred of remorse for Grace's suffering. Not an ounce of empathy for Daniel's plight. She scarcely listened before issuing her commands to the healing center staff like a soldier on a battlefield, severing any lifelines we had left. I gritted my teeth as I climbed into the car, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands hovered over the wheel for a moment, shaking. Why? How could she abandon her family so heartlessly? Then my phone rang, jolting me out of my thoughts. The caller ID showed Grace's name. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, my chest twisted in a mix of dread and duty. I knew what awaited me on the other side of this call. Her voice, her pain. Finally, I answered. "Mother!" Grace's voice hit me with full force, hoarse and brittle from crying. "Mother, she's going to let me— Scarlett, she won't." "Grace," I interrupted, trying to steady my voice, though my throat felt tight. "Calm down, darling. What happened now?" "She's refused," Grace sobbed, her words garbled through her raw emotion. "She's cut me off completely. No one in the Northern Territories will treat me now. They're all scared, terrified of her and Roman's influence." Pain stabbed through my chest as her sobs grew louder, her words harder to make out. I clenched the steering wheel with one hand, my knuckles whitening. "She's doing this on purpose," Grace continued. "She wants me to die. But I'll apologize. I'll do anything. If she wants my confession, I'll give it. I'll settle every score with her. Just, Mother, please talk to her. Convince her." Her pleas made my chest heavy. Helplessness was a bitter taste in my mouth. I knew Scarlett wouldn't change her mind. I'd seen it in her eyes. No, she wasn't the Scarlett I thought I once knew. Grace. I started softly, my heart aching as I heard her cries. What could I even say? That I'd try? Even though I knew it was futile? Grace's desperation continued. "It's not fair, Mother. I didn't deserve this. If Scarlett has an issue, she can take it out on me personally. But I can't fight this poisoning alone. I'm not strong enough, not like she is. Please, Mother, please." Her voice cracked, breaking into a whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Don't let me die." And just like that, my resolve shattered into pieces. How could I not act? She was my daughter, the one I loved and nurtured all these years. I couldn't abandon her now, no matter the circumstances, no matter the odds against me. I'll figure it out, Grace," I stammered, though even I could hear the uncertainty in my tone. She clung to those words like they were her lifeline. "You'll talk to Scarlett again? You'll make her change her mind, won't you?" I wanted to say yes, to promise her the world and more. But deep down I knew Scarlett was gone, lost to me and everything our pack once stood for. Still, I couldn't say that. Instead, I lied. "I'll speak to her," I said weakly, hating the sound of my own voice as I let those words out. "I'll try again." The office in Roman's villa had the perfect atmosphere for work. The snow falling outside lent the space an unusual tranquility, broken only by Claire Evans speaking animatedly across from me. For someone new to the intricacies of supernatural politics, Claire fit right into this world over the years. Though her wide eyes darted around the luxurious room with an awestruck curiosity, she still had a professionalism about her that I valued immensely. "Scarlett," Claire joked, brushing invisible dust off the files she carried, "you should reimburse me for the stress of worrying about you the entire week." I laughed lightly, though the edge of my amusement was dulled by exhaustion. "When have I ever let you worry for real, Claire?" Emma Chase, who sat nearby sipping tea, glanced over with a raised brow. "Oh, I don't know. What about when we heard Northern Medical Supplies terminated your contract? Or when we found out the Winter Pack's influence reached our suppliers? It isn't like that." I insisted, though both women exchanged skeptical looks. "Tell that to our inventory." Claire's playful tone turned more serious as she held up a folder. "If you're determined to leave us for the Eastern Territories, at least promise you'll make whoever's in charge still take care of." Her words trailed off as I sensed the unspoken worry behind them. I reached across the table and placed a hand over hers briefly. "I wouldn't trust anyone other than Emma to manage that. Do me a favor. Guide her, just for the transition, all right?" Claire blinked, clearly touched. "You're doing this for all of us, aren't you? You wouldn't walk away unless everything was handled first." "Exactly," she nodded, wiping her eyes discreetly. "I'll make sure it runs smoothly, Scarlett. Thank you. I mean that." Minutes later, Claire excused herself to take a call, leaving Emma and me alone in the room. I reached for more of the documents to review. However, Emma's sharp gaze pinned me in place. "So," she said deliberately, "what's that mark on your neck?" Startled, my hand flew to the claimed spot. "Roman, It's nothing. Scarlet, she hissed, leaning forward, her usual teasing tone replaced with genuine concern. That's a claiming mark. Did Roman? Emma, I snapped, though the crimson flush rising in my cheeks betrayed more than I wanted to. Keep your voice down. Her jaw slackened as she absorbed my defensive outburst. She inhaled sharply. You mean it's true? You're mates now? It felt like all the oxygen had fled the room. I avoided her eyes, awkwardly fiddling with the documents. I sighed and nodded hesitantly. It was unexpected. Unexpected? Emma exclaimed in a half-whisper. Scarlet, this is huge. You're mates with the Shadow King. What'll happen when you return to the Eastern Territories? Won't Luna Catherine or Natalie? Roman will handle it, I said firmly, cutting through her torrent of questions. He can protect me. Roman? She repeated slyly, latching onto my casual mention of his name. You're awfully confident now. I rolled my eyes at her cheeky grin, but didn't rise to the bait. Emma leaned closer, her hands resting over mine. Promise you'll call me if it doesn't work out, all right? This healing center will always have your name on it. Her sincerity floored me. Though I teased her mercilessly in return, I couldn't help but feel that same wave of loyalty crashing over us. She wasn't just a friend. She was family in so many ways the Winters pack never could be. We moved to leave as Claire re-entered the room, her earlier businesslike demeanor softening when Roman's towering frame came into view from the grand hallway. He wasn't alone. Eric Blackwood's smooth European accent drifted through the air, thick with his usual charm, while Aiden trailed behind them, arguing about something I couldn't hear. Emma stiffened the moment her eyes met Roman's icy, imposing presence. But before she could hurry past unnoticed, her boots slipped against the snow-dusted tile beneath us. Time seemed to freeze as she flailed for balance in the split second that followed, blindly grabbing the closest solid object for support. That solid object was Eric Blackwood's belt. The resulting topple dragged the startled Eric down with her, their collision ending gracelessly against the polished floor. I blinked, struggling to process as Eric groaned while Emma sputtered incoherent apologies, her crimson-faced indignity becoming immediately apparent. And Roman? He stood watching from atop the short steps with one raised brow and an unreadable expression, his eyes gleaming with quiet amusement under the cool exterior. Chapter 174, An Awkward Encounter. The cold air stung my face as I stumbled on the icy ground, trying to regain my balance. My hands reflexively shot out to steady myself. The next thing I knew, my fingers had latched onto something unnatural. It wasn't cold or hard like the ground. Oh no. No, I froze, mortified, as I realized my hand was firmly gripping Eric Blackwood's belt, his belt, the leather looped snugly around his expensive designer pants. Eric's sharp intake of breath was audible. His designer glasses had slipped down, landing askew on his otherwise impeccable nose. He stared down at me, his icy blue-gray eyes narrowing dangerously. Let go. His voice was clipped, taut with annoyance. Each word hit like a drop of freezing water against my burning face. My mouth flapped soundlessly as the horror of the situation caught up with me. Let go? Yes, of course. My hand should obey. But it didn't move, instead remaining rooted to the spot in terror. I'm sorry, I finally managed to squeak out. Aiden Walsh, who had been loitering nearby, burst into loud, uncontainable laughter. He pointed a finger at me, tears practically forming in his eyes from the sheer hilarity of the situation. Emma, Aiden managed between gasps. What are you trying to do to Eric? Are you trying to strip him? I'm not. The ice, I stammered, flushed redder than an overripe tomato. Claire, standing a few steps back, saw the scene unfold and rushed forward. She reached out, gently patting my shoulder and pulling me back. Emma, let go, she whispered furiously. Her words finally snapped me out of my petrified state, and I released Eric's belt like it had burned me. My hand felt like it had a mind of its own, disobedient and utterly treacherous. Eric straightened instantly, fixing his designer suit primly. His face was thunderous as his icy glare pinned me to the spot. He adjusted his belt and brushed an imaginary speck of dirt off his lapel, muttering something in his native European accent that I really didn't want to understand. I am so sorry, I squeaked again, scrambling to step back. Scarlet chose that moment to arrive, of course. Her tall, poised figure emerged from the entrance, and her piercing green eyes widened slightly as she took in the bizarre scene. Her gaze flickered from Eric's death glare to me, still trembling like a wet kitten, and then finally to Aiden, whose sides hurt from laughing so hard. The expression on Scarlett's face was unreadable at first, but soon her lips pressed into a thin line, as if she were fighting the urge to laugh herself. I groaned internally and slapped my flaming cheeks with both hands. "Sorry, I'm so sorry," I mumbled shamelessly before fleeing toward the car. My limbs moved on autopilot, driven solely by embarrassment. Claire hesitated, but eventually hurried after me, trying to keep up. As Emma bolted, leaving a mortified crimson trail in her wake, I couldn't help but watch the chaotic scene with rising amusement. Claire followed her quickly, muttering soothing reassurances. Aiden, in the meantime, leaned against the railing, struggling to catch his breath. His laughter came in fits and starts, blending into the crisp morning air. "Did you see that?" he gasped, barely able to keep upright. "Enough, Aiden," I said sternly, though I wasn't sure I had much authority over someone on the verge of passing out from laughter. But Eric remained composed, standing tall and austere, radiating European elegance. He adjusted his glasses and turned toward the entrance, without acknowledging Aiden's ridiculous display. I decided to break the uncomfortable silence. "What happened?" I asked, though the situation seemed painfully obvious. Eric paused briefly and glanced at me sideways. His tone was polite but cold. "An accident, no doubt." He adjusted his cuffs. "I'll leave it at that." Aiden, however, refused to let the moment go. No, he said, wiping at his eyes. "You can't just leave it there. Scarlett, Emma nearly yanked off his pants." I groaned inwardly. Of course, his storytelling would only add exaggerated salt to Emma's already gaping wound. "It was the ice," I defended, feeling a pang of sympathy on Emma's behalf. "She didn't mean for—" Roman's towering form appeared from behind me. His sharp gaze took in the disheveled scene, like a hawk surveying chaos, and he raised an unimpressed brow at Aiden's antics. "You're making jokes about Eric?" Roman's voice was calm, yet there was a hint of a reprimand beneath the surface. Eric, clearly uninterested in dragging this any further, inclined his head toward Roman. "Let's discuss what I came for," he said curtly, brushing past me and into the villa without another word. Once we were inside, Roman's sharp eyes fell on my feet as I headed for the stairs. "Stop!" I froze mid-step, turning to give him a confused look. His gaze shifted to my feet, narrowing slightly in disapproval. "Damp slippers," he said. "Why?" "Oh, I hadn't noticed. The wet patches where my slippers had brushed the slightly icy entrance made sense now." I shrugged lightly. "The entrance must have iced over again after they cleaned it." Roman turned, motioning for the housekeeper to approach. "Temperature checks. Has protocol been followed? And why isn't the ice fully cleared?" The housekeeper flushed nervously, bowing her head. "It was cleared earlier this morning, Alpha. The temperature dropped unexpectedly again." Before he could push further, I stepped in. I had just walked through. "It's not her fault, Roman." The housekeeper glanced at me gratefully and hurried to offer me fresh slippers. I waved her off, promising to change clothes after heading upstairs. Roman gave me a skeptical look before nodding. He and Eric disappeared into the study soon after that to discuss their important Alpha business. As I climbed the stairs, Emma called, her voice trembling more than I'd expected. "Scarlett?" she started hesitantly. "Emma," I replied calmly. "Are you okay?" Her words gushed out in a frantic jumble. She didn't wait for me to answer. "Scar, that was the most humiliating thing that's ever happened to me." I smiled faintly at her dramatic tone, but kept my voice reassuring. "It was just an accident, Emma. Eric knows that. Don't let it bother you too much." "Don't let it bother me?" she cried incredulously. "Scarlett, I grabbed his belt. His belt. Do you know how close he was to yelling at me?" "He didn't yell, though," I pointed out lightly. "Close enough," she whined. "And don't even start on Aiden. He's never going to let me forget this. I'll be hearing about it for years." I couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. "You'll survive, Emma. And we're heading to the Eastern Territories soon. I promise you won't have to see Eric's face much longer." Emma sighed, clearly calming down somewhat. "Still, my luck is terrible. I mean, first that, then—" Her words trailed off oddly. "Then what?" I asked curiously. She hesitated, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "Scar, this morning I saw something strange at Shadow Mall." I frowned slightly. "What kind of something strange?" Marcus Winter, she said, almost whispering. I saw him with a woman. I raised my brows. That wasn't exactly earth-shattering. His Luna, Sarah? No, Emma said firmly. Not Sarah, someone younger. That gave me pause. And there was a baby carriage, Emma added hesitantly. And bodyguards, 2 of them surrounding him like it was some kind of secret operation. A heavy silence hung between us following her words. Clearly, this wasn't just idle gossip. Chapter 175, Family Secrets. Emma's voice crackled with certainty through the phone, her tone sharp and unwavering. Scarlett, I'm telling you, it was Marcus Winter. Clear as day, I saw him multiple times. He wasn't even trying that hard to hide. I pinched the bridge of my nose, pacing back and forth across the carpet in my room. Marcus Winter, at Shadow Mall, with another woman and a baby carriage? Are you absolutely sure? He's supposed to be at the PAC hospital. Daniel was just discharged, and Grace is still... On death's doorstep? Emma finished bluntly. Yes, I know, which is what makes this even worse. But trust me, Scarlett, I'm not making this up. Her voice steadied. I saw him. His arm was around her waist. They looked... close. Not casually close, but intimately close. That didn't sound like the Marcus Winter I knew, distant and calculated, more obsessed with his PAC's strength and reputation than anything personal. That doesn't sound like him at all. Marcus barely looks at Sarah in public, let alone shows affection. Exactly, Emma shot back. But there he was, acting like a love-struck teenager with this woman, and I swear, if you saw it, you'd believe me. They were standing close enough, I practically expected them to kiss. I gripped the phone tighter, processing the weight of her words. You said there was a baby carriage? Yep, and it wasn't decorative, Scarlett. The bodyguards closed ranks around him whenever anyone got too close. Definitely hiding something, no doubt about it. My mind churned, trying to piece this together. Who was the woman? Someone from the Winter PAC? Emma let out a frustrated huff. No clue. She was younger, though. Mid to late 20s, maybe. Long, dark hair, dressed expensively, but casually enough to not stand out too much, and she acted like she belonged there. Not even a little hesitant. I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed, staring out the window. Snowflakes drifted lazily past, their slow descent mocking the chaos in my head. But why now? Daniel's injured. Grace is... I hesitated, trying to find the right words. Barely hanging on. Why would Marcus risk something like this at such a sensitive time? Because he thinks he can get away with it, Emma replied without missing a beat. He's Marcus Winter. The man could stare down a rogue alpha and make them flinch. He's arrogant enough to think no one will question him. Arrogant or not, I said, my voice hardening, this could destroy whatever's left of Sarah. Emma's voice softened slightly. You're thinking about telling her, aren't you? I paused, my thoughts a tangle of conflicted feelings. Despite everything Sarah had done, her favoritism toward Grace, her coldness, I couldn't shake the faint pang of pity that surfaced at the idea of her husband's betrayal. Don't try to deny it, Emma pressed. You may act all tough and indifferent, but I know you, Scarlett. You don't want her to find out the hard way when it's already too late. I clenched my teeth, hating how well she could read me. Even if I wanted to, what good would it do? I can't just accuse Marcus without proof. Then let me get the proof, Emma said, her voice laced with determination. Emma, no. I groaned, already regretting where this was heading. That's dangerous. You'll drag yourself into PAC drama you don't need to be part of. I'm already in it, Scarlett, she replied sharply. I'm your friend. These are your PAC problems. That makes them mine too. Sarah's not my PAC, I muttered, though the argument felt weak even to my ears. Emma ignored me. Listen, if there's one thing Sarah deserves after everything Marcus has put her through, it's to know the truth. Even if she's been awful to you, she deserves this much, doesn't she? I sighed heavily, resting my forehead in my free hand. I don't know, Emma. I don't know. Emma's tone softened, coaxing me like only she could. Let me do this, Scarlett. Consider it my last charitable act for Sarah Winter. After this, I'm officially washing my hands of their mess. I couldn't help but laugh softly at her drama. You're impossible, you know that? But you love me anyway, Emma quipped, her confidence shining through. I didn't respond, letting silence settle for a moment. My conflict was clear, but so was her resolve. Fine, I relented at last. But be careful. If Marcus finds out you're sniffing around, it won't end well for you. Emma let out a victorious whoop that made me flinch. Don't worry, Scarlet. Subtlety is my middle name. Somehow, I doubted that. The call ended, but before I could fully collect my thoughts, a familiar voice called out behind me. Scarlet! I turned to see Aiden Walsh bounding toward me, a bright pink box clutched in his hand. I already didn't like where this was going. Stop right there, I said, holding out a hand. But Aiden was relentless. He closed the distance in seconds, all but shoving the box at me. Here for you. I blinked, staring at the box like it might explode. What is this? Moon-blessed protection herbs, he said matter-of-factly. Every drop of blood in my body rushed to my face. What? Why are you giving me this? Aiden tilted his head, genuinely confused by my reaction. Because you need them? I thrust the box back at him. Then give them to Roman. Why on earth would you hand these to me directly? If I gave them to Roman, he wouldn't take the hint, Aiden said, exasperated. I'm looking out for you, Scarlet. You're re-entering the Eastern Territories soon. Do you have any idea how much pressure Luna Catherine will put on you? You're her pride and joy, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared. I stared at him, dumbfounded. What are you even talking about? Re-entering the Eastern Territories doesn't change anything between me and Roman. Doesn't it? Aiden challenged, crossing his arms. You don't think anyone will try to use your current situation to manipulate pack politics? My brain screeched to a halt. What was he implying? Hold on, he continued before I could respond. Let me ask you something. Have you been taking any moon-blessed preventive herbs? I blinked at him, suddenly too stunned to speak. No? Why would I? Aiden's eyes widened in horror. Scarlet, why wouldn't you? Do you realize what could happen? You and Roman are a newly mated couple, if you're not careful. Stop, I hissed, gripping the box tightly to my chest as if that would make him drop the subject. My face burned hotter with every word he said. But before he could dig himself into a deeper hole, a shadow fell over us. Aiden froze mid-sentence, his eyes darting behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The electricity in the air was answer enough. Roman. His ice-blue eyes swept over us, narrowing slightly when they landed on the box in my hands. What are you hiding? Roman asked, his voice deceptively soft. Aiden vanished so quickly he might as well have teleported, leaving me alone with Roman and the damning evidence of Aiden's misguided attempt at help. I clutched the box tightly, my face burning hotter than ever. How was I going to explain this? Chapter 176, Sacred Bonds. My face burned hotter than the sun as Roman's sharp blue eyes locked onto mine. The pink box in my hands felt like it weighed 10 times more than it should. I held it behind my back, trying in vain to escape his questioning gaze. He tilted his head slightly, his smirk teasing. Little wolf, why do you look guilty? I let out a nervous laugh. And no reason. My voice cracked halfway through, and internally, I cursed Aiden Walsh to the deepest pits of the underworld. That meddling fool. Roman, of course, didn't let up. His eyebrow arched as he took a step closer. His broad frame towered over mine effortlessly. Are you hiding something from me? No, I said way too quickly. Before I could step back, his arm darted out, snatching the box from my trembling hands as if it were nothing. I gasped, attempting to grab it back, but Roman's reflexes were, annoyingly, much faster. Moon-blessed herbs? He asked, holding the pink box up for inspection, his tone lazy but the twinkle in his eyes sharp. My soul left my body. Mortified, I buried my face in his chest, my voice muffled against his shirt. It's not what it looks like, he laughed, a deep, amused chuckle that rumbled through his chest. His free arm wrapped around my waist, keeping me pressed against him. Oh, then please, little wolf, enlighten me. What is this, if not what it looks like? I clung to him tightly, as if hiding my face would make the embarrassment go away. It's Aiden's fault. He gave them to me. Roman hummed thoughtfully, the sound vibrating against my cheek. Aiden gave this to you? He leaned down slightly, his cool breath tickling my ear. Are you sure it wasn't a certain little wolf trying to pass me a message? No, I all but shrieked, pulling back enough to glare at him. I am not signaling anything. The teasing smile playing at his lips only deepened. His eyes glimmered with mischief. Sure about that? Roman, I huffed, stomping lightly on his foot, but he didn't even flinch. He chuckled again and finally set the box on a nearby table. His fingers lingered briefly on my waist, his voice dropping. Well, I suppose I'll have to take your word for it. This time. My heart pounded as the mate bond buzzed with his amusement. Ugh, why was he enjoying this? Desperate to redirect the conversation, I blurted out, Roman, there's something else I need to tell you. His jaw tensed slightly, his playful demeanor sobering instantly. What is it? I swallowed hard, the knot in my stomach tightening. I'm not taking the moon-blessed protection herbs, I admitted in a small voice. His brows furrowed in confusion. Protection herbs? I stammered, my cheeks flaming. You know, for that. It took a second for the meaning to dawn on him, but the shift in his expression was immediate. His gaze darkened, his mouth curving into a slow, satisfied smile that sent shivers down my spine. You don't need them, he said simply, his tone firm and without hesitation. I blinked up at him. What? Roman's hands traveled up to cup my face gently. The weight of his words made my head spin. We don't need those herbs, Scarlet. Let's make this official. Official? I breathed, my voice barely audible. The intensity in his eyes sent flames racing across my skin. Our mate bond, he said, his voice steady. Let's complete it. Now. My world tilted on its axis. Every thought drained from my head, replaced by the thunderous pounding of my heart. What? I whispered again, my throat dry as I stared at him. We'll hold the formal marking ceremony back in the Eastern Territories, Roman continued, his tone calm and certain, as if he had already decided. But we don't need to wait to complete the bond, just you and me. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes at his words. It was surreal, almost like a dream. Are you... My voice trembled as emotion bubbled to the surface. Are you asking to mark me? He smiled softly, brushing his thumbs over my cheeks. Not a formal proposal, not yet. But yes, I want to strengthen our bond, Scarlet, he said, his tone firm. And afterward, I'll make sure every wish of yours comes true. Those simple words shattered every wall I'd carefully built over the years. Tears spilled down my cheeks as the feelings I'd buried for so long surged to the surface. Roman, my voice broke as I clutched his shirt tightly. I was so sad before, I admitted, the memories of my pain threatening to overwhelm me. His smile turned teasing. Sad because you were so in love with me back then, little wolf. I gasped, my tears momentarily forgotten as indignation surged. You! I smacked his arm with a sniffle. You knew all along, didn't you? You're teasing me. Roman chuckled, clearly enjoying my expression. How could I not notice? You were just a little cub then, glaring at anyone who dared to get close to me. My face burned hotter. I was not a cub, I protested, glaring up at him even as disbelief made my head spin. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, and you think you can challenge me now? Any words I might have said died on my lips as he tilted his head, his slow, lazy smile igniting something deeper within me. At that moment, the pink box of moon-blessed herbs tumbled from the table onto the floor, snapping me out of my daze. Roman, I exclaimed, pointing at the fallen box. He glanced at it lazily, clearly unconcerned. His suggestive grin returned. I don't think we'll be needing those, little wolf. My throat tightened as his words registered, their meaning clear. My face felt like it was on fire as I sputtered. You can't just say things like that. His amusement deepened, but before I could say more, the door creaked open and Hunter stepped inside. I froze. Hunter froze. The air grew thick with awkward tension. Hunter cleared his throat, his eyes darting between Roman and me, clearly realizing he'd walked into something. I'll come back later. He backed out quickly, closing the door before I could even say a word. I groaned and buried my face in my hands. Hunter saw that! I'm going to die of embarrassment! Roman's laugh rippled through the room. Let him! Roman! I smacked his chest lightly, but he only kissed the top of my head in response. What's wrong, little wolf? Embarrassed about claiming me as your mate? He teased. I glared at him. Who's embarrassed? You're the problem. His deep chuckle sent heat racing down my spine. You're adorable when you're flustered. Before I could retort, he leaned in closer. How are your injuries? His voice was softer now, his hand brushing against my back. Still hurting? I'm fine, I said quickly, waving him off. Aiden's healing salve worked miracles, apparently. His smile turned knowing. Oh, so it worked that well, did it? I realized my mistake too late. Not completely. I'm still healing. His grin turned mischievous. Still healing, huh? His tone told me he didn't believe me for a second. Roman, I huffed, crossing my arms, you're acting like Aiden now. His laughter deepened. Is that so terrible? It is, I shot back, flustered beyond reason. Just when I thought I couldn't get any more flustered, Roman leaned down, his lips mere inches from mine. But before those lips could meet mine, the shrill ring of his phone shattered the moment. We both froze, the spell breaking as reality came crashing back in. Phone, I blurted out, desperate for any excuse to escape his intensity. Roman sighed but pulled the phone from his pocket. As soon as he answered, a sharp, angry voice blasted through the speaker. Roman Thorne, did you force her or did Scarlet volunteer? Explain yourself now. My blood turned to ice. It was Luna Catherine. Roman's wide eyes slowly turned to me as silence hung in the air. We were finally speechless. Chapter 177, A Pack in Crisis. My heels clattered against the tiled floor as I stormed into the pack house, my breathing shallow, my heart pounding with fear. Grace's cries over the phone still echoed in my head, each piercing sob slicing through me like a blade. I didn't waste time removing my coat. I tossed it onto the nearest chair and sprinted up the stairs. Luna Sarah, a pack nurse called behind me, her rushed footsteps matching mine. She caught up, her eyes filled with urgency. Miss Grace's condition has worsened, and no healers will answer our summons. Her words made me pause at the top of the stairs, my hand gripping the railing tightly. What do you mean? My voice trembled, though I fought to keep it steady. Why won't anyone come? The nurse hesitated, then lowered her head. They're afraid, Luna, afraid of Miss Scarlet and by extension Roman. I stiffened. My nails dug into the wood of the banister. They're frightened, but they forget their duty. To let someone die from fear? My voice rose, anger boiling in my chest. Before the nurse could respond, a scream, louder, rawer, more agonizing than anything I'd ever heard from Grace, shattered the air. Grace, I whispered, my heart clenching. I didn't wait for the nurse's reply. I raced down the hallway and pushed her door open with all my strength. What I saw froze me in place. Grace was thrashing on the bed, her body contorted with pain. Sweat matted her once golden hair to her pale, clammy face. Her lips were cracked and her arms were veined with dark streaks, a horrific reminder of the silver poisoning eating away at her every second. Mother, she rasped out, her voice faint. Help me. Please, it hurts. I rushed to her side, kneeling by the bed. My hands cupped her face, and I flinched at how unnaturally hot her skin was. She shivered violently, trembling as though caught in midwinter's fiercest storm. Shh, Grace, I whispered. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes. I'm here, sweetheart. I won't let this continue any longer. Mother, her weak voice broke through her chattering teeth. I can't. It feels like my blood is burning. Her thin fingers clutched my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone so frail. I stroked her hair, careful not to touch the angry, darkened veins that marred her once flawless skin. We'll figure something out, I promised, though my voice faltered. Even I didn't fully believe my own words. No one's coming. No one will heal me. She sobbed, her tears mixing with the sweat on her face. Her breaths came in shallow gasps. I'm going to die, aren't I? Don't say that. My voice cracked. I shook my head fiercely, leaning closer. I won't let that happen. She clung to me, her nails digging into my sleeve. Then go to Scarlet. Beg her. Her fevered eyes locked onto mine, desperate, pleading. Her lips trembled as she continued, her words slow and deliberate. Tell her. I'll confess everything, the rogue wolf attack, all of it. If that's what she wants, she can have it all. Her confession knocked the air from my lungs. Though deep down, part of me had always suspected her involvement, hearing it now was like a blow to the chest. My jaw trembled, but I quickly stifled my reaction. This wasn't about me, this was about her suffering. I'll talk to her, I said softly. My hand brushed her damp hair back as more tears spilled down my face. I'll make her understand, Grace. I'll do everything I can. She nodded weakly, her body racked with another wave of shivers. Her hoarse breaths grew louder, and her hand fell away from my arm. Another scream filled the room. I could physically feel her pain as if it were my own. Yet, I had no idea how to help her anymore. How had it come to this? How had I allowed this storm to consume us all? Before I could think further, my phone rang in my pocket. The sharp tone pierced the tense air, jolting me. I scrambled to answer it. Now! Of all times! I hissed, thinking it must be Marcus, finally ready to take some responsibility for our disaster. Luna Sarah, said the calm yet firm voice of the hospital administrator on the other end. "We're calling regarding Daniel." "Yes," I demanded. "What is it? How is he?" "We've been instructed to discharge him today." "What?" My throat tightened as my grip on the phone tightened. "He's nowhere near healed. His condition isn't stable. I understand your concerns, but these are orders, Luna. We've no choice." I was nearly shaking, my free hand gripping the edge of the bedside table to steady myself. "Tell Marcus. He'll handle this." There was a pause. My stomach dropped. "Alpha Marcus hasn't been present since this morning," they finally said. The silence following his words was heavy, suffocating. My mate, missing. While Grace suffered, while Daniel teetered on the brink of ruin, Marcus was absent. My knuckles turned white as I ended the call, not waiting for further explanation. I stared blankly at the far wall, Grace's muffled whimpers filling the space around me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The web Scarlet was weaving around us was tightening, strangling our family. Grace's mistreatment, Daniel's impending discharge, all of it came back to her. To Scarlet. How had I let this happen? I, who was supposed to protect my family, was being undone by my own failure. Snow fell outside steadily, blanketing the world in white. I sat on my bed, curled beneath the covers, staring out the large glass window. The room was warm, the fire crackling softly in the background, but I still felt a chill deep inside me. The pack phone lay in my hands. I watched it as if it might explode. Finally, I mustered the courage to call. Luna Catherine answered almost immediately. "Scarlet!" Her voice, filled with a mix of worry and determination, was all too familiar. "How are you holding up? I've been hearing things about Vincent Gray and his actions against the pack. Mark my words, my dear, when you come back to the Eastern Territories, I will personally see to it that fool is dealt with." Her fierce protectiveness brought a small, shaky smile to my face. No matter what, Luna Catherine had always been in my corner. "Luna," I hesitated, unsure how to approach the next topic. My hands felt clammy as I gripped the phone tighter. "There's something I need to tell you." Her tone softened, growing gentler. "Go on, dear. Whatever it is, you can tell me." I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Then I said it. "Roman and I..." My voice wavered slightly. "We're mates now. He wants to proceed with the spousal marking. Actually, we both do." For half a second, there was silence. Then, "Absolutely not." Luna Catherine's voice thundered through the speaker so loudly, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You let that boy mate with you without telling me first?" she said, incredulous. "Has Roman lost his mind? And you, Scarlet, how could you agree to this just like that? Do you even understand what this means?" I opened my mouth to argue, but her words came faster than my thoughts. "Do you think this is some casual arrangement? Do you think I'll allow him to claim you without..." She trailed off, clearly trying to find words to express the depth of her disapproval. "Unbelievable. That arrogant boy thinks he can bypass proper tradition? And you, I expected." Before she could continue her furious tirade, Roman appeared silently in the doorway. He strode across the room and plucked the phone from my hands without giving me a chance to stop him. "Luna Catherine," he said, his voice smooth and unbothered. "We'll discuss this when we return." And with that, he ended the call. Just like that, as if speaking to her was no more significant than placing an order for coffee. "Roman," I gasped, staring up at him. "You hung up on her." He didn't answer. Instead, he placed the phone on the nightstand, then turned to me. His ice-blue eyes, always so sharp and commanding, softened as they met mine. Before I could protest further, he leaned down, cupped my face, and kissed me. It wasn't just any kiss. It was long, deep, and filled with such intensity that my thoughts scattered like leaves in the wind. My heart thundered in my chest, the mate bond between us buzzing with energy. When he finally pulled back, my breaths came in short gasps. I stared up at him, completely at a loss for words. "Little wolf," he murmured, his lips brushing against my hairline. I blinked, still wrapped in my emotions. "Luna Catherine seemed angrier with you than with me," I managed to say weakly, trying to distract myself from what had just happened. Roman's lips quirked into a small smile. "Of course. She was. She adores you far too much to blame you." "No, she doesn't," I argued softly, shooting him a half-hearted glare. He chuckled, the sound rich and warm, and pinched my chin playfully. "You're silly if you think that. I huffed, swatting his hand away. You don't get to call me silly after what you just did. His smile widened, but there was a glimmer of something dangerous in his eyes. Careful, little wolf, he warned, his voice low. You wouldn't want to provoke me right now. For a moment, I considered backing down. But then, seeing the way his smile teased the corners of his lips, I did something reckless. I pinched his arm in retaliation. The laughter that followed shook through me, easing the tension that had gripped my chest earlier. For now, at least, I felt safe. For now, I felt loved. Chapter 178, A Flurry of Gossip and Pack Drama. Roman stood by the window, speaking in low tones over his phone. The snow outside softened the world into a serene, white void, but his expression was anything but peaceful. His sharp profile cut against the glass, and the way his body was taut told me the call wasn't casual business. I pretended not to eavesdrop, though I couldn't make out much from the few murmurs that slipped through. His tone was calm, but there was an unmistakable intensity brewing underneath. As if sensing my curiosity, Roman turned his head slightly, catching me watching him. His piercing blue eyes were unreadable, but the faintest corner of his lip quirked up into something resembling a smirk. Without breaking stride in his conversation, he walked to the door, disappearing into his study for privacy. A moment later, my phone vibrated noisily against the side table. I sighed, already half dreading who might be calling. The Winters? Rachel Thompson? Or worse, Natalie? When I saw Emma's name flash across the screen, I answered immediately. Let me guess, I said, leaning back in my chair. You have news, don't you? Emma's voice came through bright and teasing. Oh, Scarlett, do I? You're going to love this. There was a playful lilt to her tone, but I could tell excitement brimmed just below the surface. Whatever she had dug up, it was bound to be entertaining or deeply troubling. All right, I said, trying to hide my own curiosity. Out with it. What's gotten you so worked up this time? Oh no, it's not just one juicy bit of gossip, Emma countered, and I could hear her grin. I've got 3, all winter pack related. That got my full attention. 3? 3, she confirmed, her voice practically vibrating with glee. And trust me, all of them are game changers. Want me to pick one to start with? My lips twitched. Her enthusiasm was contagious. Go on, then. Hit me with the first bomb. Surprise me. She cackled softly, clearly thrilled with her findings. Let's start with Alexander Amber, she said. Turns out Victoria Amber's already lining up potential mates for him. I blinked, surprised by the revelation. You heard me, Emma said, settling into the role of storyteller. Victoria Amber herself is quietly vetting candidates. Looks like she's dead set on polishing Alexander's tarnished reputation. It doesn't matter if he made a mess of his previous bond with you. She's fixing it. Or trying to. I snorted. Who would even want him after everything with Grace? I mean, seriously. He's carrying more baggage than an airport terminal. Emma laughed at that, but quickly added, You'd be surprised. The Amber Pack's status in the Northern Territories is still a huge draw. There are plenty of ambitious, status-hungry she-wolves who wouldn't think twice about glossing over his mistakes for the chance to be Luna. I leaned forward, propping my chin on my hand. Her words made sense, though the thought still grated on me. Grace isn't going to take that quietly, I muttered. Oh, she won't, Emma agreed slyly. But you don't need to worry about handling her. I've already taken care of that for you. My eyebrows shot up. What did you do? A little bird in the form of Ayla Quinn might have gotten the memo already, Emma said gleefully. You know how she loves to be the bearer of terrible news, especially to Grace. She'll make sure Grace hears about Victoria's plans before the day is out. I couldn't stop the grin that spread across my face. Remind me to never get on your bad side, Emma. Wise choice, she shot back, laughing. All right, ready for the next piece of drama? Always, I said, leaning back in my chair. Emma's tone shifted to something slightly more serious, though the excitement was still there. This one's about Marcus Winter. I stiffened slightly. Memories of Emma's earlier revelations about him and the woman at Crystal Mall creeping back into my thoughts. Did you find out anything about the woman he was with? Oh, did I? Emma said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. She's not just anyone. That woman is Jennifer Moore, the Winter Pack's financial advisor. I blinked, caught off guard. Jennifer Moore? The human? Yes, that Jennifer Moore, Emma confirmed. And it gets better. Are you ready for this next part? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Go on. She has children, twins to be exact, Emma said, her words dripping with significance. A boy and a girl. And guess who their father is? It hit me like a falling tree. No. Oh yes, Emma said, savoring the moment. Marcus Winter is apparently more active than we all thought. Those twins are his. The mental image of Marcus holding a baby stroller was suddenly much clearer than I wanted it to be. I guess he's not as focused on Daniel's future as he likes to pretend, I muttered. Emma gave a dry laugh. Guess not. Though I'm dying to see Sarah's face when she finds out. Think she'll handle it gracefully? Not a chance, I said flatly. We were both laughing when Emma spoke up again, her tone turning sly. All right. Last one. This one's all about Sarah Winter herself. Bring it on, I said, genuinely curious now. Emma let out a dramatic sigh, clearly reveling in the storytelling. Rachel Thompson had a very public confrontation with Sarah at the PAC hospital yesterday. That caught me off guard. Rachel? Daniel's human lover? The very same, Emma confirmed. Her tone grew animated as she described the scene. Rachel showed up at the hospital trying to see Daniel. Sarah tried to block her, of course, but Rachel wasn't having it. She started yelling loudly and accused Sarah of everything under the moon. My eyes widened. Including? Emma listed the accusations like she was ticking them off on a checklist. Encouraging Grace to steal you from Alexander, pushing Grace and Daniel into some bizarre, almost romantic situation, and basically prioritizing her adopted daughter over everyone else, including you. Oh, and all of this happened in front of the hospital staff and visiting PACs. It was spectacular. I couldn't help but laugh despite myself. Please tell me you recorded it. Emma practically squealed. Of course I did. I recorded the whole thing. I'll send you the video as soon as we're off the phone. You're going to love it. I shook my head, still laughing. Emma, you're a menace. Why, thank you, she said brightly. Anyway, I'll send the video now. Let me know when you've seen it. After ending the call, I took a moment to breathe, letting the ridiculous stories settle in my mind. The Winters really were the gift that kept on giving, though not in the way they intended. I was just about to check my phone for Emma's video when a PAC servant appeared at the door. Miss Scarlett, Alpha Roman wishes to see you in the training room. I raised an eyebrow. Roman didn't usually summon me to the training room unless something serious or mildly entertaining was going on. All right, I said, standing and following the servant. When I arrived at the training room, it didn't take long to figure out what was happening. Aiden Walsh was running laps around the edge of the room, his face red and drenched with sweat. His movements were sluggish, and he looked moments away from collapsing. Roman stood in the center of the room, his arms crossed, watching Aiden with an unreadable expression. Roman, this is torture, Aiden panted as he stumbled past. Scarlett's going to hate you for this. Roman didn't bat an eye. 10 more laps, he said calmly. What? Aiden wailed, nearly tripping over his own feet. For the love of the moon goddess, I'm a healer, not a warrior. Roman didn't respond, his calm demeanor unchanged. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and raised an eyebrow at Roman. What exactly is going on here? I asked, amused despite myself. Roman glanced at me, his lips twitching into a faint smile. He's building stamina. It's for his benefit. Aiden groaned loudly, clutching his side. I don't heal anymore. I don't need stamina. Roman ignored him entirely, his focus shifting back to me. It's entertaining, isn't it? I couldn't help but laugh. Aiden shot me a betrayed look as he stumbled past again, mumbling something about wolves being worse than humans. Chapter 179, Dangerous Intrusion. I couldn't help but smile as I watched Aiden stumble through another lap around the training room. His normally confident demeanor had crumbled, replaced by a sweaty, panting mess. His designer clothes clung to his body, and his perfectly styled hair now stuck to his forehead in damp clumps. Roman, Aiden gasped between labored breaths. This is punishment, not training. Roman stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, his expression impassive as stone. His ice-blue eyes tracked Aiden's sluggish movements with clinical detachment. If you have enough breath to complain, you're not working hard enough, Roman replied coolly. Aiden shot me a desperate look as he trudged past. Scarlett, please! His voice was barely above a wheeze. Tell your mate to stop this madness. I leaned against the doorframe, trying not to laugh at his pitiful state. "What exactly did you do to deserve this?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Nothing," Aiden protested, stumbling slightly as he rounded a corner. "He's just settling personal scores because of what I said about the moon-blessed herbs." Roman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 5 more laps for that comment. "What?" Aiden nearly tripped over his own feet. "I can't even feel my legs anymore." "This is for your own good," Roman insisted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "As a healer, you need stamina." "I don't heal anymore," Aiden practically wailed, clutching at his side where a stitch was clearly forming. "I'm an administrator. I sit at a desk." Roman's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "All the more reason to maintain your fitness." I bit my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Seeing the normally composed Aiden reduced to this state was oddly satisfying, especially after that embarrassing moon-blessed herbs incident. "Having fun?" Roman asked, his eyes meeting mine across the room. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see Emma's name flashing on the screen. "I should take this," I said, backing toward the door. "Don't kill him while I'm gone." Roman merely nodded, his attention returning to the suffering Aiden. I stepped into the hallway and answered the call. "Emma?" "Scarlett." Emma's voice practically vibrated with excitement. "You won't believe what's happening at the PAC hospital right now." I moved further down the corridor, finding a quiet alcove near a large window overlooking the snow-covered grounds. "What's going on?" "Total chaos." She was practically breathless. Rachel Thompson showed up again to see Daniel, but this time Grace was there too. Sarah tried to intervene, and now they're all screaming at each other in the main lobby. I raised my eyebrows. "Seriously, what are they saying?" "I'm recording it right now," Emma said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Rachel is accusing Sarah of favoring Grace over her own biological children, including you. She's saying Sarah deliberately ignored Daniel's relationship with her because she was too busy trying to push Grace toward Alexander." I rolled my eyes. "That's hardly news." "No, but this is... Rachel just suggested there was something inappropriate between Grace and Daniel." I nearly choked. "What, like romantically?" "She's implying they were closer than step-siblings should be." Emma confirmed, clearly relishing the drama. "You should see Sarah's face. She looks like she's about to collapse." My phone buzzed with an incoming video message from Emma. I quickly put her on speaker and opened it. The video showed the hospital lobby in disarray. Rachel, a petite human woman with fiery red hair, was standing defiantly before Sarah, whose normally composed face was twisted with shock and fury. Daniel sat in a wheelchair nearby, his bandaged hands resting uselessly in his lap, his expression mortified. Grace stood slightly behind Sarah, her face pale, but her eyes burning with hatred. "You pushed them together!" Rachel was shouting, her finger jabbing toward Sarah. "You encouraged Grace to see my Daniel whenever she wanted, day or night, while keeping me away." "That's not true," Sarah protested weakly, her voice trembling. "Isn't it?" Rachel's voice rose higher. "You've been orchestrating this entire family drama. First, you favored Grace over your real daughter, Scarlett. Then you pushed Grace and Daniel together while trying to pair her with Alexander. What kind of mother does that?" The video ended there, cutting off Sarah's response. "Wow," I breathed, genuinely shocked by the intensity of the confrontation. "That's... something." "Oh, it gets better," Emma continued gleefully. "Remember those photos of Marcus with Jennifer Moore and the twins? I arranged for a PAC member to accidentally show them to Sarah right after this blow-up." I gasped. "Emma, you didn't." "I did." She sounded immensely pleased with herself. Sarah grabbed them and started screaming. Total meltdown. "The winter pack is imploding, Scarlett. And the best part? You don't have to lift a finger. They're doing it all to themselves." I wasn't sure whether to be impressed or alarmed by Emma's machinations. "You're terrifying sometimes. You know that?" Emma laughed. "I prefer resourceful. Anyway, I thought you'd want to know." As Emma continued talking, the hairs on the back of my neck suddenly stood on end. My wolf, Cora, stirred beneath my skin, her awareness sharp and alarmed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I sensed a presence behind me. Too close, too quiet. Before I could turn, strong arms wrapped around me from behind. Pure instinct took over. I flung my phone away and drove my elbow backward hard, connecting with something solid. A grunt of pain rewarded my efforts, but the grip around me only tightened. "Let me go," I screamed, twisting violently in the stranger's grip. My wolf surged forward, wanting to break free, to shift, to fight. "Scarlet, stop struggling," a hauntingly familiar voice murmured near my ear. I froze for just a second, my blood turning to ice. That voice. I knew that voice. "Darian?" I whispered in disbelief. Darian Morrison, the son of Malcolm Morrison, who had served as beta to my adoptive father, Liam Thorne. What if the same Darian who had been exiled along with his sister Lily years ago after they tried to force me to leave the Thorn Pack? "Hello, Scarlet," he replied, his grip not loosening. "It's been a while." Panic surged through me. I renewed my struggles with greater desperation. "Roman!" I screamed at the top of my lungs, hoping our mate bond would carry my distress to him. "Help!" Darian's hand clamped over my mouth, muffling my cries. "Shh! We don't have much time." I bit down on his hand with all the strength I could muster. He cursed but didn't release me. "You always were a fighter," he hissed, adjusting his grip to avoid my teeth. "Just like Liam taught you." The mention of my adoptive father only fueled my rage. I slammed my heel down on his instep and threw my head back, connecting with his chin. The impact made stars burst behind my eyes, but I heard his grunt of pain with satisfaction. Just as I was preparing for another attack, heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway. I sagged with relief as Roman rounded the corner, his eyes blazing with fury, his wolf Logan pushing against his human form. Roman's ice-blue eyes locked with Darian's amber ones over my shoulder. The tension in the air crackled like lightning before a storm. I struggled desperately in Darian's grip, my eyes never leaving Roman's face. The two wolves' gazes remained locked in a silent battle of wills as my heart pounded frantically in my chest. Chapter 180, Shadow King's Wrath. The moment I felt Scarlet's panic surge through our mate bond, my wolf Logan roared to life. I abandoned Aiden mid-sentence, sprinting toward the source of her fear. Hunter's confused shout faded behind me as I tore through the villa's corridors. The bond between us pulsed with her terror. Each frantic beat of her heart echoed in my chest as if it were my own. "Roman!" Her scream pierced the air, flooding my veins with cold rage. I rounded the corner and froze. There stood Darian Morrison, his arms wrapped around my mate, restraining her as she fought against him. My vision narrowed, the edges turning red as Logan pushed against my skin, demanding release. "Darian, you dare!" The roar that tore from my throat was barely human. Darian met my gaze with defiance, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The sight of his hands on Scarlet made my blood boil. Before either of us could speak, he struck her neck with calculated precision. Her eyes widened for a split second before rolling back, her body going limp in his arms. The sight of Scarlet unconscious, vulnerable in the arms of my enemy, unleashed something primal within me. I reached for my gun, the silver bullets loaded and ready. My finger itched against the trigger. "Release her. Now." My voice was deadly calm, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Darian's smirk only widened as he shifted Scarlet's body in front of his, using her as a shield. "Let's see what's harder, Shadow King, your bullet or her body?" I snarled, my wolf pushing harder against my skin. The urge to shift was nearly overwhelming, but I forced it down. A full shift now would delay me, give him precious seconds of advantage. "You've made your last mistake, Morrison." I took a measured step forward, my aim never wavering. "Have I?" Darian taunted, backing toward the window. "Did you know Liam promised her to me?" The mention of my father's name from his lips was like acid. "You lie." "Do I?" His eyes glinted with malice. "Ask her when she wakes up. If she wakes up, your father all but guaranteed her as my mate before his death." I fired, the bullet grazing his shoulder as he twisted away. Blood bloomed across his shirt, but his grip on Scarlet remained firm. Suddenly the air filled with a thick, acrid smoke. Wolfsbane. My lungs burned as I inhaled involuntarily, the poison specifically designed to weaken our kind. Through watering eyes, I watched him break through the window, Scarlet's limp form cradled against his chest as they tumbled into the snow below. "Hunter!" I bellowed, fighting through the smoke. "Security breach! South side!" Alarms blared throughout the villa as I launched myself through the shattered window, landing hard on the frozen ground. Blood spattered the pristine snow, Darian's blood, creating a trail leading toward the woods. I followed it, my wolf's senses picking up Scarlet's scent mixed with his. The forest erupted with movement. Rogue wolves, at least a dozen, emerged from the trees. They had been waiting, I realized. This was planned. Hunter and 3 shadow enforcers appeared at my side, their weapons drawn. Alpha. Hunter's voice was tight with controlled rage. Orders? Find her, I growled, my eyes never leaving the blood trail disappearing into the trees. Kill anyone who stands in your way. The rogues attacked in coordinated waves, clearly following a strategy. Not random outcasts then, trained wolves. Darien had prepared well. Silver bullets sang through the air as my enforcers engaged. I pushed forward, following the trail, Logan's tracking abilities guiding me through the chaos. Every second Scarlet remained in Darien's hands was another second too long. Through our mate bond, I could feel her consciousness beginning to stir. I pushed harder, driven by a single thought. I would tear Darien Morrison apart, piece by piece, for touching what was mine. Pain exploded at the base of my skull as consciousness returned. My eyelids felt heavy, my mouth dry. Disoriented, I tried to make sense of my surroundings. The steady hum of an engine vibrated beneath me, and the scent of leather mixed with blood filled my nostrils. I was in a vehicle, a black SUV from what I could tell through blurry vision. The memory of what happened crashed over me in a sickening wave. Darien. The attack. Roman's fury. Look who's awake. Darien's voice sent ice through my veins. I forced my eyes to focus. He sat across from me, his shoulder being bandaged by a rough-looking wolf I didn't recognize. Blood stained his shirt where Roman's bullet had found its mark. Fury surged through me. Cora, my wolf, rose beneath my skin, clawing for control. With a feral snarl, I lunged at him, my fingers curved like claws, aiming for his wounded shoulder. Strong hands grabbed me from behind, yanking me back into my seat. 2 rogue wolves held me firmly, their grips bruising against my arms. Easy now, Darien crooned, his amber eyes gleaming with amusement. Is that any way to treat your promised mate? You are nothing to me, I spat, straining against my captors. Roman will find you, and when he does... Roman, Darien cut me off, his voice dripping with disdain. Always Roman. Tell me, Scarlet, did you really think the Shadow King could protect you forever? Better than you ever could, I shot back, refusing to show fear. His expression darkened. That's where you're wrong. Roman doesn't care about you, not like I do. He's simply protecting an investment. You know nothing about him, I hissed. I know enough. Darien leaned forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. I know he took his adopted sister as his mate. Rather perverse, don't you think? Something in me snapped. With strength born from pure rage, I wrenched one arm free and slapped him hard across the face. The sound cracked through the vehicle like a gunshot. Silence fell. The rogue wolves tensed, clearly expecting Darien to retaliate with violence. Even the driver glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. Darien touched his reddening cheek, his expression unnervingly calm. You've developed quite a temper during your time away. Touch me again, I warned, and I'll do worse than slap you. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with painful force. Is that so? Perhaps I should break this pretty hand of yours to teach you some respect. I didn't flinch. Instead, I leaned forward and bit down on his hand, hard enough to draw blood. Cora howled with satisfaction as the metallic taste filled my mouth. Darien cursed, trying to pull away, but I held tight, digging my teeth deeper. Finally, he squeezed my jaw with his other hand, forcing me to release him. I spat his blood back into his face, a small, defiant victory. You little... He wiped the blood from his face, fury flickering in his eyes. Alpha, one of the rogues interrupted, pressing a finger to his ear. We've got a problem. The Shadow King's on our trail. His wolves are tracking us through the territory. Darien's expression hardened. He turned to me, his voice dangerously low. Tell your mate to back off, or I'll complete a mating bond with you right here. My blood ran cold, but I refused to show it. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? He reached out, his bloodied fingers tracing my lips. His touch made my skin crawl. Your mouth has become corrupted with disrespect during your time away from the Thorn Pack. Perhaps it needs retraining. I stared at him for one long, calculating moment. Then, without warning, I bit down on his thumb with savage force. What? Darien yanked his hand back with a curse, fresh blood dripping onto the leather seats. The rogues exchanged glances, clearly surprised by my continued defiance. She's more alpha she-wolf than hostage, one muttered to another. How much more is he going to tolerate?